Story 1. This story is titled, My Adopted Brother Slept with My Fiancée Before the Wedding. She was never yours to begin with. He smirked. I made sure he has nothing left. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. So I'm sitting here at 3 a.m. with bloody knuckles barely holding it together. Figured I'd write this down while I'm still processing this shit. Maybe it'll help someone spot the red flags I missed. Some background. I have an adopted brother. I'll call him Alex, who has always been the golden child in our fam. My parents brought him home when I was 4, and from day one it was like they built something with this kid while I was just an afterthought. The backup quarterback. Maybe it was some kind of overcompensation. Like they had to prove they loved him just as much, maybe more, because he wasn't theirs by blood. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time we were in the same room, it always felt like they were going the extra mile for him. Meanwhile, I was just there. Their biological kid, the one who didn't need the special treatment. And Alex was the charming one, got straight A's without even trying, captain of whatever sports team he felt like joining that semester. Meanwhile, I was just the regular bio kid they already had. Don't get me wrong, my parents fed and clothed me and all that, but there was always this vibe where Alex could do no wrong, and I was just supposed to suck it up. My dad missed my high school graduation because Alex had a tennis tournament the same day. That kind of shit was normal. Fast forward to now. I'm 32 male, he's 30. Alex works at this fancy investment firm, drives a Tesla, has that downtown penthouse with the glass walls. I always wondered if part of him felt like he had something to prove. Like being adopted meant he had to outshine me at everything just to secure his place. Maybe he thought being the better son would erase the fact that he wasn't their real son. If that was the case, he sure as hell succeeded. Because I busted my ass to become a firefighter. Made lieutenant last year, youngest in my district. I love my job, literally save lives. But to my parents? Still doesn't compare to Alex's Wall Street bullshit. I'm not making surprise trip to Italy money like Golden Boy. Then I met Mia. Fuck, guys. She's smart, hot as hell, funny, and for once, someone who saw me. Not as Alex's brother, but as Jake. She's a graphic designer, has this awesome sleeve tattoo of geometric shapes that still somehow looks classy. We dated for 3 years, and when I proposed, she said yes without even hesitating. Now here's where it gets fucked up. My parents, of course, insisted Alex help with the wedding planning. He's got connections, Jake! He knows the right people. Mia thought it was great too. Who wouldn't want a fancy wedding at half price? So Alex volunteered to handle the hotel arrangements for the wedding party and stuff. You've got enough on your plate with your work schedule, bro. Let me take care of it, he said, showing me screenshots of the bookings on his phone. Always the helpful one. Always there. Like a fucking snake waiting to strike. So there I was in the rehearsal dinner. Nothing seemed off until I realized I hadn't seen Mia for like an hour. She texted saying she was feeling overwhelmed and needed some air. I figured it was just normal bride jitters or whatever. Tried calling, but straight to voicemail. Then I noticed Alex was gone too. Probably went to grab more ice, someone said. But his car wasn't in the parking lot. Something in my gut felt wrong, like when you walk into a room that's too quiet on a fire call. I opened Instagram to message Mia when I saw she'd posted a story for like a second before deleting it. But I caught the hotel room number in the background. Different from ours. Room 312. Here's the thing about being with someone for 3 years. You know their passcode. Mia never changed hers, her sister's birthday. I checked her recent texts with Alex. Lots of wedding planning stuff, but then more personal shit. Flirty. Can't wait to see you tonight. Kinda texts. I took the elevator up to 312 and used the spare keycard Alex had given me in case of emergency. The fucking irony. The hallway was dead quiet except for my footsteps and some ice machine humming in the distance. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the keycard. The door beeped green. They didn't even hear me come in at first. Didn't yell, didn't slam the door, just stood there taking it all in. My mind raced on what I should do at this shitty moment. I did the first thing that came to mind, taking pictures on my phone. Evidence. That's when Alex noticed me. This asshole didn't jump or try to cover up. He just smirked. Actually, fucking smirked. She was never yours to begin with, he said, reaching for his phone. Want to see the messages? How long this has been going on? How she comes to me every time you're working those 24-hour shifts? Mia was crying, as if she's doing it involuntarily. Jake, please, I can explain. It's not what... I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders. That was the moment he sealed his fate. Not when he took from me, because looking at Mia now, she wasn't even worth stealing. Not when he crawled into bed with my fiancée. Not when he spent years leeching off everything that should have been mine like he was entitled to it. It was right now, when he thought he won, when he decided to gloat. I smiled a cold, knowing, you're about to regret everything kind of smile. Yeah, I said, stepping forward, and you were never built to keep it. Then I swung and caught him with a right hook that connected with his jaw. He stumbled back, surprised that his usually calm brother had finally snapped. We crashed into the hotel desk, knocking over lamps, the TV. Mia was screaming for us to stop. Alex got in a couple shots, but he didn't stand a chance against someone who carries people out of burning buildings for a living. I tackled him into the bathroom door, splintering it. You take everything, I barked, driving my fist into his smug face again. And for what? Her? I let out a sharp laugh, shoving him back like the worthless parasite he was. You didn't steal anything, Alex. You just took out my trash. He staggered, barely staying on his feet, finally realizing he was never built to go toe-to-toe with a man who actually earned what he had. The hotel security finally pulled us apart. My knuckles were bleeding. Alex's eye was already swelling shut. His lip split. As they dragged me out, I looked at Mia, who was clutching the sheets around her like they could somehow protect her from the mess she made. Keep the ring, I said, my voice weirdly calm. It's fake anyway. It wasn't fake, but watching her face fall was worth the lie. I sat in my truck in the hotel parking lot. I called and canceled the venue. I also called my crew chief to see if I could pick up extra shifts next week. Anything to keep busy. After sitting in my truck for like an hour that night, I finally decided to call my parents back, just to let them know the wedding was off. Simple, direct. But before I could even finish my sentence, my mom cut me off. Alex already called us. How could you, Jake? Attacking your brother like that? We raised you better. Of course he called them first. Classic Alex move, always controlling the narrative. Did he mention he was fucking my fiancé? I shouted into the phone. Yeah, not my proudest moment, but I was still seeing red. Dead silence on the other end. Then my dad. There must be some misunderstanding. Alex said Mia came to him upset about having doubts, and he was just comforting her when you barged in and went crazy. Unbelievable. Even with this, they were taking his side. The golden child could do no wrong, even when caught deep in my fiancé. Yeah, he was comforting her all right. With his thing. My mom gasped. My dad told me I was being vulgar and irrational, and to come over tomorrow when I'd calmed down. I hung up. I sat there, gripping my phone so hard my fingers ached. My head was pounding, my heart still slamming in my chest, but I wasn't even sure if it was anger anymore. It felt like I was free-falling, like my entire life had just split down the middle, and I had no idea where I was going to land. Mia was gone. The wedding was off. My parents, predictably, took Alex's side. And Alex was probably sitting somewhere smug, knowing he got away with it again. How long? That question was eating at me. How long had this been going on? Was it just some spur-of-the-moment betrayal? Or had I been a joke to them for months? Years? Did he always have his sights on whatever was mine? And then another thought hit me, one that made my stomach turn. Was Mia the first? I ran through every serious relationship I'd ever had, every girl I ever trusted, and a sick feeling crawled up my spine. Alex had always been charming, always the center of attention, and I never thought twice about it. Until now. I needed to know. I scrolled through my contacts, found a number I hadn't used in years, Alex's ex, and hit call. She answered, "Who's this?" "Rebecca, it's Jake." A pause. Then, "Why are you calling me?" Straight to the point. "I need to ask you something about Alex." Rebecca scoffed. "No, you really don't. It's important." I forced the words out, my throat dry. I need to know. When you two were together, did he ever cheat on you?" That got another sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You're calling me out of nowhere, after 2 years, to ask if Alex was faithful? I don't know what kind of mess you're in, but I'm not part of it. I have nothing to do with him anymore. It is your business." My voice came out harsher than I meant it to, but I didn't care. He was sleeping with Mia. Silence. When Rebecca finally spoke again, her tone was clipped. "That's awful. But it's not my problem. You were with him for 3 years," I pushed. "You just suddenly broke up. No explanation. Was it because of something like this?" Rebecca exhaled sharply, like she was trying to hold back something bitter. "Jake, I don't owe you anything. You should have figured out the kind of guy your brother is before he wrecked your life, not after. I'm just trying to understand," I said. "I need to know if this is who he's always been." There was a long pause. Then, flatly, she said, "Move on," and she hung up. I stared at the screen, a wave of anger rolling through me. She knew something. I could feel it, but she wasn't willing to say it. Fine. I didn't need her. I still had a job to do. I shoved my phone in my pocket, turned the key in the ignition, and pulled out of the lot. I decided to go to first thing in the morning to my parents' house to show them exactly what their golden child had done. The next morning, as I was about to head out again, my phone rang, and it was Rebecca I picked up, bracing for another shutdown, but her voice was different. "Jake, I'm sorry about yesterday. I didn't know. I didn't say anything, just waited." She took a breath. "There's something you should know about Alex. Can we meet?" We agreed to meet at this 24-hour diner I go to sometimes after rough shifts. When I got there, Rebecca looked different than I remembered. She seemed more confident, but also kind of nervous. "I wasn't going to say anything," she started, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "But after what he did to you and Mia, you deserve to know." She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of a little boy, maybe 18 months old. Cute kid, curly hair, big eyes. "This is Connor, your nephew." I stared at her, not understanding at first. Then it hit me like a ladder falling off the truck. "Alex has a son? Why would he hide that?" Rebecca laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because he wanted nothing to do with him. When I told him I was pregnant, he said it would ruin his image and offered to pay for an abortion. When I refused, he made me sign an NDA as part of a support agreement. I get monthly payments as long as I never tell anyone he's the father, especially not your parents." I looked closer at the photos. The kid had the same dimple on his right cheek that Alex has. Holy shit. "There's more," Rebecca said, scrolling through her phone. Screenshots of conversations, emails where he talks about other women while we were together, including some from Mia that started 6 months ago. 6 months. Mia and I were already engaged by then. We were looking at fucking wedding venues. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of the lies. And because your family deserves to know what kind of person he really is." She hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Alex has been taking credit for your work at the fire department." I blinked. "What? How? You know Tony at your station? The one with the podcast about extreme sports? Tony, the guy who always seemed too interested in my ideas at shift meetings. Alex and Tony play racquetball together. Tony's been feeding Alex all your fire safety protocols and community outreach ideas. Alex has been presenting them to the city council as his own consulting work. That's how he landed that city contract last year, with your shelter improvement plan." My head was spinning. The golden child had built his kingdom on lies, and I had the evidence to burn it all down. "What are you going to do?" Rebecca asked. I smiled, the kind of smile you get when you're about to hit back for the first time in your life. "I'm going to introduce my parents to their grandson." The next morning, I asked Rebecca if she'd be willing to come with me to my parents' house. She was nervous about breaking the NDA with Alex, but I had a workaround. "What if I'm the one who tells them? You're just there to confirm." She thought about it, then nodded. "I think that works." So Sunday evening, we showed up at my parents' suburban home, the same one where they have a trophy case dedicated to Alex's achievements, while my fire department commendations are stuffed in a drawer somewhere. When my mom opened the door and saw Rebecca, she looked confused. "Rebecca? What a surprise. We haven't seen you since. Well, it's been a while." "She's with me, Mom," I said, walking in. My dad was in his usual armchair watching golf. He looked up, frowning when he saw my still bruised knuckles. "Jake, if you've come to apologize to your brother, he's not here." "I know. That's why I came now. There's something you both need to know." I motioned for Rebecca to sit. I pulled up the first photo of little Connor and handed my phone to my mom. My dad leaned over to look. "What a cute baby," my mom said, confused. "Whose child is this?" "Your grandson," I said flatly. "Alex's son." The color drained from both their faces. My dad snatched the phone, zooming in on the picture like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. That's not possible. Alex would have told us if he had a child." Rebecca spoke up. "He made me sign an agreement never to tell anyone. He pays child support on the condition I keep quiet." I swiped to the next photo. Connor at the park, the family dimple clearly visible. "Oh my God," my mom whispered. "He looks just like Alex did at that age," my dad finished, voice hollow. I took back my phone and pulled up some of the screenshots Rebecca had shared. "There's more. Alex has been cheating on every girlfriend he's ever had, including with my fiancée, for at least 6 months." My parents sat in stunned silence as I showed them message after message, date and time stamped. "And," I continued, "he's been stealing my work through a guy on my crew, presenting it as his own to city officials." My dad shook his head. "No, There must be some explanation. That's when the front door opened and Alex walked in. Perfect fucking timing. He froze when he saw all of us in the living room, his eyes locking on Rebecca and then the phone in my hand. One side of his face was purple from where I'd connected. "What the fuck is she doing here?" he snarled. My mom stood up, tears in her eyes. "Is it true? Do you have a son?" Alex's face went through about 5 expressions in 2 seconds, finally settling on cold calculation. "Rebecca's mentally unstable. That kid could be anyone's—" "Stop lying," Rebecca cut in, something fierce in her voice. "I have the DNA test results in my purse. Connor is your son, and these people are his grandparents." My dad stood now too, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "All these years. We trusted you, supported you. We always tried to make you feel like you belonged. And this is how you repay us? By lying? By hurting your brother?" Alex laughed. That condescending laugh I'd heard a million times. "Oh, please. Poor Jake. Always the victim. You want to know why Mia came to me? Because she was bored. Because Jake's just a—" He didn't finish. Because my dad did something I'd never seen in my 32 years. He slapped Alex across the face. "Get out of my house," he said, voice shaking. "Now." Alex looked stunned, touching his cheek where the slap had landed on top of my bruise. Then his eyes narrowed. "Fine, but don't expect another dime from me. No more vacations, no more helping with the mortgage. You're on your own." As he stormed out, slamming the door, my parents collapsed onto the couch. My mom was openly sobbing now. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she kept saying. "We didn't know. We didn't see. It wasn't the vindication I'd expected. It just felt sad." After Rebecca left, I stayed for a couple more hours just talking with them. They had a lot of questions about Connor. When was he born? Does he have any allergies? Does he like dinosaurs or trucks? Kid's not even 2, so both, I guess. Monday morning, I spent canceling all the remaining wedding stuff. Pro tip: when vendors hear "my brother slept with the bride," they get surprisingly flexible about refund policies. Most gave back at least 70%, even the venue that was supposed to be non-refundable. The few who were being dicks about it? Let's just say their Yelp pages are about to get some pretty detailed reviews. Mia's been blowing up my phone, first with teary apologies, then with accusations like, "You never made me feel special and you work too much," then back to begging forgiveness. Most recent one was a voice message where she's crying so hard I can barely understand her, saying she made a huge mistake, and Alex manipulated her. I haven't blocked her. I'm just letting the messages pile up in case I need them later. Plus, it's kinda satisfying watching her spiral, NGL. The interesting part started Tuesday. Remember Tony from my fire station? The guy who was feeding info to Alex? I confronted him during shift change, laid out everything I knew. Dude turned white as a ghost. "I didn't know he was using you like that," he stammered. "He just asked casual questions about your schedule, your policies. Said he was proud of his brother's work. Save it," I told him. "You've got 2 options. Help me take him down properly, or I go to the chief today about how you've been sleeping through night shifts and swapping coverage without logging it." Tony chose option 1. Smart guy. With his help, I compiled evidence of all the times Alex had used his connections to get special treatment, including the consulting he did for the fire marshal's office, where he basically took my safety improvement suggestions from family dinners and presented them as his own to city officials. I sent everything directly to the ethics committee at Alex's company, with timestamps showing these were my ideas that predated Alex's innovations by months. Included a nice little note about how he'd been billing the city for expert consulting on fire safety protocols developed by an actual fucking firefighter. But I didn't stop there. Remember how Alex was so insistent on handling the hotel arrangements for the wedding? Turns out he put everything on the company card. The premium suites, the champagne, all of it filed as client entertainment expenses. The corporate fraud cherry on top of the intellectual property theft sundae. Wednesday morning, I got a call from Rebecca. She was crying, but happy tears this time. "They called me," she said. "Alex's parents. They want to meet Connor." Turns out my mom couldn't wait. She'd asked me for Rebecca's number and called her first thing Monday morning. They arranged for a park meetup on Thursday. "I don't think Alex knows yet," Rebecca said. "He hasn't changed the child support deposit or anything. He will soon," I told her. Sure enough, Wednesday afternoon my phone blew up with text from Alex. "What the fuck did you do? My boss just called me in for an emergency meeting. You fucking snake." I didn't respond. Just let him stew. Thursday morning, I was on shift when the station TV caught my eye. Local news was showing Alex's investment firm. The ticker at the bottom read, "Local investment banker suspended amid ethics investigation." My captain saw me staring and clapped me on the shoulder. Isn't that your brother's firm? Yeah, I said, trying not to smile too obviously. Huh, he said. World's full of assholes trying to cut corners. Then he narrowed his eyes at me. You look way too happy about this. This have anything to do with your wedding getting canceled? I just shrugged. Cap's a smart guy. He figured it out and laughed. Remind me never to piss you off, Lieutenant. That day, Mia showed up out of nowhere at the station. She looked like hell, puffy eyes, hair a mess, that whole feel sorry for me look she probably practiced in the mirror before coming. 2 minutes, she begged. Please, Jake. I made a horrible mistake. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked toward my truck. If she wanted to talk, she could do it where my crew wouldn't have to watch. She trailed after me, desperate. I don't know what I was thinking, she started. Alex was just so attentive, always there when you were working those 24-hour shifts. 48-hour shifts, I cut in. If you're gonna blame my job for you cheating, at least get the schedule right. She flinched, but kept going. That's not what I meant. I got caught up in the attention. He made me feel special, but it wasn't real. What we had was real. I want to fix this. Too late, I said, voice flat. You made your choice. Live with it. Please, she was crying now, hands shaking like this was some kind of dramatic movie scene. I'll do anything. We can postpone the wedding, go to counseling. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I checked it and smirked before turning the screen toward her. Investment banker fired over ethics violations and corporate fraud. The blood drained from her face. Is that Alex? Yep. Guess his career's over. No more penthouse, no more Tesla. Hope it was worth it? Her mouth opened, then closed. But he said it was just a misunderstanding, that they were jealous of his success. I let out a sharp laugh. You believe that? The guy who lied about having a kid? The guy who screwed his own brother's fiancée? And you thought he was honest with you? Her eyes snapped to mine, confused. Wait, what? I laughed. You didn't know? Her breathing hitched. Alex has a child? I pulled out my phone again, scrolled to the picture Rebecca sent me, and held it out. A curly-haired toddler, smiling at the camera. Meet Connor, your ex-fiancé's nephew. She stared at the screen, her face going through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. He lied to me? Her phone rang. Alex's name flashing on the screen. She hesitated, then declined the call, her hands trembling. What should I do? I snorted. Not my problem. I yanked open my truck door and climbed in. But if I were you, I glanced at her one last time. I'd be careful. A guy who's lost everything? He's got nothing left to lose. I didn't wait for a response. Just pulled out and left her standing there in the parking lot, looking completely wrecked. I didn't care. This wasn't my mess anymore. As I walked back into the station, I ran into Erin, one of the paramedics I'd known for years. She had this way of making the worst days feel manageable, like she carried an invisible weight for everyone else. You good? She asked, glancing at Mia still standing outside like some tragic movie heroine. I exhaled. Yeah, just took out the last piece of trash from my life. She snorted. About time. Then, after a beat, you ever gonna let me buy you a drink? Or are you still on your lone wolf, trust no one bullshit? I blinked. I hadn't even considered dating again. But the way she said it, like it was just a normal thing, no pressure, felt different. Give me a couple weeks, I said, half joking. She smirked. You've got one. And then she was gone, leaving me standing there, suddenly wondering if moving on didn't have to be so complicated. And as it turned out, Alex's mess was only getting started. Remember how his company fired him for ethics violations and fraud? Turns out that was just the beginning. The ethics committee didn't just fire him. They reported him to the Financial Regulatory Board. His broker license is being reviewed, which basically means he's unemployable in his field. The fancy corporate credit card is gone, and apparently he was living pretty much paycheck to paycheck despite the high salary. Lots of debt, minimal savings. I know all this because my parents have been getting regular updates from him, mostly desperate calls asking for money. They've been keeping me in the loop, which is a new and weird experience. For once, I'm not the last to know family news. Meanwhile, Mia's been on her own spiral. She lost her job at the design firm, not because of any scandal, but because she stopped showing up after our wedding was called off. Her roommate, who was supposed to be a bridesmaid, reached out to me last week. Apparently, Mia's been crashing on the couch, crying constantly, and refusing to look for new work. She keeps saying she's going to fix things with you, the roommate told me. I told her to move on, but she's not listening. I blocked Mia's number after that. Not dealing with that level of delusion. But the real shit hit the fan last night. I was at home watching the hockey game when someone started pounding on my door around 11 p.m. I checked the peephole and nearly fell over. It was Alex, looking like absolute hell. He had a fresh black eye, his clothes were wrinkled, and he reeked of cheap beer when I opened the door. Not exactly the polished investment banker image he used to maintain. "Can I crash here?" he slurred, trying to push past me. I blocked the doorway. "What happened to your eye?" He touched it like he'd forgotten it was there. "Ran into one of Mia's friends at a bar. Guy sucker punched me. And you're here because got evicted yesterday. Been staying at a motel, but my card got declined." The pathetic part is, he wasn't even trying to sound sympathetic. Like he genuinely expected I'd just let him in after everything. "Not happening," I said, starting to close the door. He stuck his foot in the gap. "I'm your brother." I let out a cold laugh. "You're not my brother. You're just some kid my parents picked up and decided was more important than me." His face twisted, but I didn't let him get a word in. "You want to talk about family? A real brother doesn't stab you in the back. A real brother doesn't steal from you, doesn't sleep with your fiancé, doesn't make a career off your work. You're just a liar, a fraud, and now, a homeless piece of shit." His mouth opened and closed, like he wanted to argue but didn't know where to start. He settled on sheer entitlement. "God, are you still on that?" It was weeks ago. He actually sounded annoyed, like I was being unreasonable for not letting it go. I shoved his foot out of the way with my own. "Go crash with one of your banker friends, or Mia." His face changed then. "Mia won't answer my calls. None of my friends will. Mom and Dad hung up on me." I raised an eyebrow. Wow, it's almost like actions have consequences. That's when he switched tactics, his voice getting all soft and pitiful. "I need help, Jake. I think I have a problem. With substances." Christ. This guy. Always the victim. "You have lots of problems, Alex. None of them are my responsibility." "Where am I supposed to go?" he whined. "There's a shelter on 8th and Pine. I helped set up their fire safety system last year. Tell them Lieutenant Reeves sent you." His face contorted in disgust. "A shelter? I'm not some bum." "Could have fooled me," I said, and slammed the door in his face. He started pounding on it again, yelling all kinds of shit about how I'd ruined his life and always been jealous. Classic Alex. Rock bottom and still convinced it's everyone else's fault. I turned up the TV volume and let him tire himself out. My neighbor across the hall, a retired detective, poked her head out at one point. I heard Alex try to charm her into letting him use her phone. That went about as well as you'd expect. Eventually, he left, but not before shouting that this wasn't over. Very original threat. Much scary. This morning, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Rebecca. Alex showed up at my apartment at 3 a.m. demanding to see Connor. I called the police. They took him away but said I need a restraining order. Can you help?" So that's where I'm headed now. The courthouse downtown to help Rebecca file paperwork. My buddy from the academy is a sheriff's deputy now, and he said he'd help fast-track it. Meanwhile, my parents are beside themselves. My dad wants to get Alex into rehab. My mom's torn between the son she raised and the son she enabled. And I'm just trying to protect the innocent people caught in the wreckage Alex leaves behind. Alex finally ran out of people to con. The golden child routine doesn't work when there's nothing left to take. And while I'm not sitting here reveling in his downfall, I'm not losing sleep over it either. He made his choices. He burned every bridge, took what wasn't his, and now he's standing in the ashes, wondering why no one's offering him a way out. Actions have consequences, and I'm making damn sure he feels every single one. Some lines you don't cross? Sleeping with your brother's fiancé? That's at the top of the list. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt kind of empty after reading that text from Rebecca. But a few minutes after I put my phone down, another text came in. Aaron. "Hey, Lieutenant. Your week's up. Still want that drink?" I smirked, shaking my head as I typed back. "I owe you one, don't I?" 3 dots. Then, "Damn right. Friday at 7. Don't be late." For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't stewing over betrayals, canceled weddings, or family loyalty that was never really there. I was just a guy making plans with someone who saw me for who I was. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best revenge of all. Thanks for coming along for the ride, guys. Story 2. At my sister's graduation party. Mom said, "You dropped out. Maybe you'll make it as a security guard." People laughed. I stayed silent. Then a black car pulled up. A man in a suit walked in and said, "We're here for Dr. Daniel." The look on their faces was priceless. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit. My parents never got over me dropping out and choosing my own path. The snide comments never stopped, so I moved out and kept grinding in silence. When they invited me to my sister's graduation, they thought they'd get the last laugh. They ended up getting clowned. Here's how it went down. I, 25 male, remember the exact moment I decided my family wasn't worth the mental toll anymore. I was sitting in my MIT dorm room, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans and 3 whiteboards covered in code architecture diagrams. The clock on my desk showed 11:43 p.m., and I'd been coding for 16 hours straight. My eyes burned from staring at the monitor, but the neural network was finally starting to recognize the patterns I'd been feeding it. The call came from a number I recognized instantly. My parents had found out I was leaving MIT through my aunt who worked in administration. Classic small world bullshit that happens when you least need it. I hadn't told them yet, because I knew exactly how they'd react, and I wasn't in the mood for another "why can't you be more like your sister" lecture. What the hell is this about you dropping out? Dad didn't even say hello. In the background, I could hear my mom's theatrical gasp. I'm not dropping out. I'm leaving for a better opportunity. I was already mentally checking out of the conversation while monitoring my simulation's progress on the second monitor. The algorithm was 78% complete, which was way more interesting than whatever guilt trip they were about to lay on me. The neural network was learning to predict stock market fluctuations based on social media sentiment analysis, something that actually mattered in the real world. Better opportunity? Mom's voice dripped with that fake concern she'd perfected over the years. Honey, there's no better opportunity than an MIT degree. What could possibly? I've been recruited for a neural network research project with Dr. Abernathy. The work is beyond what I'd be doing in the curriculum for the next 2 years. The silence told me they had no idea what I was talking about. They never bothered to understand what I actually did. To them, computer stuff was one homogeneous blob that ranged from setting up their Wi-Fi to programming military defense systems. I could have told them I was building an AI to solve climate change or developing an algorithm to optimize porn download speeds. The blank confusion would have been identical. Dad cleared his throat. So you're quitting school to play with computers? Jesus Christ, son. Your sister would never give up like this, Mom added, delivering the final comparison in a lifetime of them. The predictability was almost comforting. At least some things never change. That was it. The last straw in 18 years of being the forgotten kid. Ellie got knocked up sophomore year of high school and you both covered it up, I said flatly. But sure, she's the perfect one. How dare you? Dad started, his voice turning into that dangerous low growl that used to scare me when I was 8. I hung up, blocked their numbers, and went back to my simulation. The algorithm had reached 82%. Progress. Unlike my family relationships. 3 hours later, my phone lit up with Ellie's face. Great. The golden child had been dispatched for damage control. What the actual F, Daniel? She hissed. Mom's crying and Dad's having a meltdown. You can't just say shit like that and disappear. Watch me, I replied, and blocked her too. Then I took the battery out of my phone. Dramatic, maybe, but effective. I turned back to my code, the blue light of the monitor illuminating my dorm room as I continued working on something that actually mattered. We grew up in a cookie-cutter house in suburban Atlanta that looked exactly like every third house in the development. Beige siding, fake shutters, and a 2-car garage that displayed my parents' mediocre life choices. Dad sold insurance to people who didn't need it. Mom taught elementary school and brought home her teacher voice every day, and Ellie was the golden child from day one. Every family photo on the mantle featured Ellie front and center, usually holding some trophy or medal, while I stood awkwardly in the background, looking like I'd been photoshopped in as an afterthought. In our annual Christmas card photos, I was always positioned slightly behind Ellie, like a backup actor waiting for the star to get laryngitis. In the 2012 photo, you could only see half my face, because the photographer was so focused on getting Ellie's good side. When I won the state robotics championship in 10th grade, my parents skipped it for Ellie's volleyball game. She was bench warmer that season and played exactly 4 minutes. They recorded it like it was the Olympics. Meanwhile, I accepted my trophy in an empty auditorium, with just my physics teacher clapping politely in the background. I didn't even tell my parents about it until 3 days later, when they noticed the trophy in my room and asked if it was for that computer club thing. When I explained what it was, my dad nodded and said, "That's nice. Did you clean your bathroom this week?" The investment difference was obvious and quantifiable. Ellie got private tutoring at $65 per hour when she struggled with basic algebra. I taught myself Python at 13, using library books and YouTube videos on our shitty home internet with a download speed that made dial-up look cutting edge. By senior year, I was getting recruitment emails from top universities. MIT offered a partial scholarship based on the encryption algorithm I'd developed that got picked up by a tech blog. The blog called it revolutionary and potentially game-changing for data security. My parents called it nice when I showed them the article, then asked if I'd taken out the trash. Ellie applied to University of Georgia because her friends were going there, and the party scene was supposedly epic. Those were her exact words at dinner, and my parents nodded like she'd announced plans to cure cancer. When my MIT acceptance letter arrived, Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to helping Ellie with her UGA application essays. When Ellie got her acceptance with a partial volleyball scholarship 2 months later, they threw a catered party in the backyard with 50 people. At my celebration, Dad grilled burgers for the four of us and said, "Don't get too cocky up there with all those nerds. Most of them wash out by sophomore year." Mom reminded me to be practical since not everyone makes it through programs like that, and maybe I should keep community college as a backup plan. Meanwhile, they'd already bought Ellie UGA merchandise, were planning campus visits, and had started a dorm essentials shopping list that included a $300 comforter set. Mom spent 6 weekends in a row hunting for the perfect desk lamp for Ellie's dorm. The crazy part? I wasn't even surprised, just numb to it. Like watching a movie I'd seen too many times to be emotionally invested in anymore. I'd reached the point where their favoritism was so transparent, it was almost fascinating from a psychological perspective. After leaving MIT, I moved into what was basically a closet with a toilet in Cambridge. $1,800 for 350 square feet. The place smelled like the previous tenant's curry experiments, and the neighbors fought at 3 a.m. regularly, but it had high-speed internet and was close to the lab where Dr. Abernathy's team worked. My apartment included a shower that ran either scalding hot or Arctic cold with nothing in between, a kitchenette where you couldn't open the fridge and the cabinet at the same time, and a mattress on the floor that I picked up from a guy on Craigslist who definitely had murdered someone on it. My only real friend through all this was Zach, a CS guy who dropped out a year before me to join a startup that was either going to make him a millionaire or bankrupt him by 30. Probably both. He had the kind of manic energy that either builds empires or ends up with restraining orders. When I told him my plans, he didn't judge, just asked what equipment I needed and helped me move my shit from the dorms. The first month was brutal. I lived off ramen, microwave burritos, and enough energy drinks to make my piss glow in the dark. Lost 15 pounds of what little muscle I had, and probably gained several vitamin deficiencies that'll come back to haunt me when I'm 40. After 6 weeks, the bathroom ceiling started leaking rusty water whenever my upstairs neighbor showered. Landlord's solution? A bucket and a promise to look into it that was about as reliable as a political campaign promise. I set up my most expensive equipment on the opposite side of the room and accepted that Mold was my new roommate. Named him Gary. Gary the Mold was more supportive than my actual family and required less maintenance. Zach would stop by with groceries, finding me in the same position I'd been in 12 hours earlier, surrounded by empty protein bar wrappers and coffee mugs growing their own ecosystems. I think one of them was developing sentient life faster than my AI project was progressing. "Dude, when's the last time you showered? You smell like you died last week and no one's found the body yet. What day is it?" I'd reply without looking away from my screens. One night during a 40-hour code marathon, I hallucinated that my keyboard was melting and the characters were crawling up my arms. Zach found me passed out face down on my desk the next morning and dragged me to the shower fully clothed, turned on the cold water, and refused to leave until I ate an actual meal. The cold shower was actually an improvement over my normal shower temperature options. "You can't revolutionize AI if you're dead, asshole," he said. "Also, you're 2 days away from scurvy. When sailors in the 1700s are eating better than you, it's time to reconsider your life choices." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd left my family to prove I could make it on my own, and here I was, barely functional, without Zach making sure I didn't accidentally kill myself through neglect. But there was a difference. Zach was helping me because he genuinely cared, not because he expected anything in return. Between the sleep deprivation, malnutrition, and cognitive strain of the research, I lost track of time. Days blurred together in a caffeine-fueled haze. I'd work until my vision blurred, pass out for a few hours, then start again. Dr. Abernathy had to implement a mandatory "no Daniel in the lab between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. policy after he found me asleep under my desk for the third time in a week. "Your brain's not a sprint engine, it's a marathon runner," he told me, confiscating my lab key. Even Tesla had to sleep sometimes. Tesla was celibate, and yeah, talked to pigeons, Not my career blueprint, I countered, and died alone surrounded by said pigeons. Not the example you want to follow, son. Despite the conditions, the work was exhilarating. For the first time, I was building something that mattered, something that could change how we process and understand data. My algorithm was showing promise, outperforming standard models by 32% in preliminary tests. I was actually happy. After 8 months of silence, my mom called from a new number. I half expected her to start speaking in code words about the package and the drop. It's Christmas, Daniel. Family should be together at Christmas. Her voice had that martyred tone she used when playing the sacrificing mother. I almost hung up, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the 2 cans of Monster I'd just chugged, or maybe it was the fact that I'd been talking to my rubber duck debugger for so long I was starting to hear it talk back. Either way, I agreed to come home for 2 days. It was a mistake on par with Microsoft's Clippy. Zach drove me to the airport. Text me when you get there so I know they haven't murdered you and buried you under the deck. Your optimism is touching, I replied, grabbing my bag. Seriously, though, don't let them get in your head. You're doing something important. The flight was uneventful, except for the guy next to me who kept trying to tell me about his cryptocurrency investments. I pretended to be deeply interested in the safety card until he finally took the hint and put his headphones on. The safety card. In the event of a water landing, your seat cushion can be used as a flotation device. In the event of returning to my family, nothing could save me. Walking into my parents' house felt like stepping into a time warp. Nothing had changed except there were even more photos of Ellie on display. It was like walking into a shrine dedicated to the cult of mediocre sister achievements. New additions included photos of Ellie at what appeared to be a sorority formal, and Ellie with her new boyfriend, a guy who looked like he had been generated by an AI program to create generic fraternity guy number 7. My mom hugged me, making a show of how much she'd missed me. Dad gave me an awkward shoulder pat like I was a coworker he barely knew. You've lost weight, Mom said, managing to make it sound like both a concern and an accusation at the same time. Ellie looked me up and down before smirking. Wow, you look tired. I guess the real world is harder than you thought, huh? My sister had perfected the art of bitchy comments disguised as concern, delivered with a smile so you couldn't call her on it without looking like the asshole. Dinner was psychological warfare disguised as a family meal. Every conversation circled back to Ellie's achievements. Her internship with a financial firm, where she mainly made coffee and flirted with executives. Her boyfriend Tyler from a good family. Her plans to graduate with honors despite struggling to pass basic statistics. Meanwhile, I got exactly 2 questions about my life. 1. When I was going back to finish school, asked with the tone of, when are you going to stop being a disappointment? 2. If my apartment was safe, because clearly Boston was a war zone compared to the mean streets of suburban Atlanta. The breaking point came when Mom brought out a photo album. Not just any album, a custom leather-bound collection titled Ellie's Journey, chronicling her college experience so far. Look at her orientation week, and here she is at her first college formal with Tyler. Doesn't she look gorgeous? Oh, and this is when we visited for Parents' Weekend. There was a separate section for her volleyball achievements, including photos from games my parents had traveled to see. Games that had happened during the same months I was setting up my research and living off packet noodles, because I couldn't afford groceries. They'd driven 6 hours to watch Ellie sit on a bench and cheer occasionally, but couldn't be bothered to check if I was literally starving in Boston. Mom, no one wants to see all these, Ellie protested with fake modesty, the kind that's actually fishing for more compliments. She was practically preening. Nonsense. Daniel wants to see what his sister's been up to while he's been away. Mom's tone sharpened. Some of us actually stick around instead of playing with computers in some dirty apartment. Ellie snickered. Yeah, bet those MIT dropouts aren't exactly lining up to hire the other MIT dropouts. What do you guys even do all day? Mom just gave that smile. Sweetheart, be nice. Your brother is trying his best with the abilities he has. I got up without a word and walked to the guest room. Started packing my bag. My mom followed. What are you doing? It's Christmas Eve. I'm leaving. Don't be dramatic. I'm just sharing family photos. I zipped up my bag. Family photos of one family member. That's not fair. You're the one who disappeared. What am I supposed to do? Pretend I don't have photos of Ellie's life? I walked past her. Dad was in the hallway now, arms crossed like he was a bouncer at an exclusive club I wasn't cool enough to enter. Running away again? He asked, blocking my path slightly. Moving forward, I corrected him. Your mother put a lot of effort into this holiday. The least you could do is stay through Christmas morning. The least I could do. Interesting phrase. The least they could have done was acknowledge my existence in a meaningful way at any point in the last 20 years. But apparently we were all falling short of expectations tonight. I called an Uber from the front lawn. It was 30 degrees and starting to snow, but standing in the cold was still better than another minute in that house. Uncle Jim came out with my coat. "They're idiots," he said simply, handing it to me. "Keep doing your thing, kid." Uncle Jim had always been the only sane one in the family. He'd made his money in commercial real estate and never married, which made him both the financial success story and the family mystery. My parents alternated between asking him for investment advice and pestering him about why he wasn't settled down yet. "Thanks for being the only normal person in this family," I told him. "Nothing normal about me," he replied with a wink. "Just got good at spotting bullshit early. Ellie's the golden goose, but you're the real deal. They'll figure it out eventually." I doubted it, but I appreciated the sentiment. The Uber arrived and I left without looking back at the house. As we pulled away, I saw my mom standing in the doorway, one hand over her heart in that practiced pose of maternal suffering. It would make a great Christmas card. By May, everything had changed. My research had been peer-reviewed and validated. Harvard offered me a position that actually paid real money, not just survival wages, but enough to live like a functioning human being. The consulting work had turned into a legitimate career with serious income. I'd upgraded from my murder mattress to a decent futon and occasionally remembered to eat green things. I even owned a second towel now, not because I was splurging, but because living like a functional human meant basic necessities weren't luxuries anymore. Dr. Abernathy, the research director who'd hired me, started introducing me as Dr. Daniel at meetings. When I pushed back, Abernathy just waved it off and said, "I know you didn't defend a thesis, but no one's going to question it after what you built." First time in my life someone gave me more credit than I deserved, rather than less. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. The algorithm we developed was attracting serious attention. 3 major tech companies had made acquisition offers, and the Defense Department had reached out about potential applications. Dr. Abernathy said my approach to neural network architecture was paradigm shifting, which sounded like academic hyperbole until I saw the data myself. We weren't just incrementally improving existing technology, we were building something fundamentally different. I still lived simply, still worked too much, but now I had direction and recognition from people who actually understood what I was building. I'd moved to a slightly better apartment, one where the shower temperature had 3 settings instead of 2: cold, hot, and skin melting. My new place had actual windows that faced something other than a brick wall, and the kitchen was big enough that I could open the refrigerator door without hitting the stove. Pure luxury. Zach's startup had actually taken off, proving that occasionally, the universe doesn't completely shit on good people. He'd upgraded from his dying Civic to a Tesla he could barely afford, but loved showing off. From ramen to ridiculousness, he called our trajectory. He'd swing by my place in his absurdly expensive car, wearing clothes that still had tags on them because he hadn't quite adjusted to having money yet. "Dude, you could afford a way better place now," he'd say, looking around my modest apartment. "I'm investing instead," I'd reply. "Compound interest is more satisfying than granite countertops." The truth was, I was saving everything I could, not because I had specific plans for it, but because having financial security was the ultimate screw you to people who thought I'd fail. Every dollar in my investment account was a dollar of independence, of never having to ask for help from people who'd proven they wouldn't give it. Then, the gold envelope arrived in the mail like some kind of fancy bomb. It was heavy cardstock with actual wax sealing the back, like we were suddenly living in Downton Abbey instead of 21st century America. Inside was an invitation in flawless calligraphy. "You are cordially invited to celebrate Ellie's graduation from the University of Georgia." No personal note, no acknowledgement of our estrangement, just my mother's handwriting on the envelope and a formal invitation inside. It was the perfect encapsulation of my family dynamics. All appearance, no substance. A beautifully wrapped empty box. I almost threw it away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was time to show up as myself, not as the failure they imagined, but as the person I'd become. Or maybe I just wanted to see their faces when they realized I hadn't ended up in a ditch somewhere. Zach thought I was insane. "These people are emotional vampires. Why go back for more? It's like you're volunteering for psychological waterboarding." "Because I'm done hiding," I said. "And maybe I want to see their faces when they realize the son they wrote off is now Dr. Daniel." "That's either the healthiest or unhealthiest thing I've ever heard you say," Zach replied, shaking his head. "I can't tell which." "Me neither," I admitted. "But I'm going anyway." The day of Ellie's graduation party, I wore a simple blue button-down and slacks. I wasn't there to impress anyone. No Harvard insignia, no visible signs of my success. I wanted them to see me, not my credentials. Zach insisted on dropping me off. Text me if you need extraction. I'll be 10 minutes away pretending to shop at Target like I need more shit in my apartment. The Tesla turned heads as we pulled up to my parents' suburban street. Another time, I might have appreciated the irony of arriving at my sister's celebration in a car that cost more than her entire education. My parents' house looked exactly the same. White brick, perfect landscaping, American flag by the door like they were auditioning for a mortgage commercial. The only difference was the fleet of cars parked outside, luxury SUVs and sensible sedans belonging to family, friends, and relatives. The backyard had been transformed with fairy lights, catered food stations, and a massive "Congratulations Graduate" banner hanging over a professional photo display of Ellie in cap and gown. Ellie was holding court in a white designer dress, surrounded by friends who all looked like carbon copies of each other. Same highlighted hair, same careful makeup, same studied casual poses for the inevitable Instagram posts. They were like NPC characters in a video game, decorative but interchangeable. My mom was playing the proud hostess in a St. John knit suit that screamed suburban wealth. My dad was manning the bar in his country club casual attire, and various relatives I barely recognized were scattered around looking impressed by the spread. The catering included a carving station, a raw bar, and what appeared to be a professional barista making custom coffee drinks. The whole setup probably cost more than my entire emergency fund. For the next hour, I watched the celebration unfold from a distance. People with frozen smiles would stop by my table with carefully curated questions. So, what have you been up to? Any plans to go back and finish school? Living in Boston still? Such an expensive city? I gave vague answers and watched them mentally file me under the family disappointment. One aunt kept referring to my work as my computer hobby, like I was building model trains in a basement somewhere. Uncle Roger asked if I was still doing that coding thing, with the tone of someone inquiring about a teenage phase they expected me to outgrow. Then my mom clinked her glass for a toast, the universal signal for enforced family bullshit. "We are so proud of Ellie today," she began, voice carrying across the yard. "Full honors, scholarship recipient, and now headed to Morgan Stanley in New York. This is what happens when you commit to excellence and actually finish your education." She looked directly at me. Not everyone's path is so straightforward, of course. Some take detours. Some never reach their destination at all. Her smile turned cruel. "You dropped out. Maybe you'll make it as a mall security guard. I hear they're hiring people who can't finish things." People clapped, laughing. Ellie beamed. I sat perfectly frozen. Taking the chance to humiliate me was expected. But it's okay. A few more minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Abernathy. "Car's on the way. Press briefing in 2 hours. Ready?" I replied simply, "Yes." The timing was almost too perfect. If I believed in a higher power, I'd think they had a sense of humor and excellent dramatic timing. 3 minutes later, a black town car pulled up to the curb. Not just any town car, a Mercedes S-Class. The driver, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than everything in my parents' closets combined, walked directly to me in the backyard. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. The music seemed to fade. It was like a scene from a movie, except instead of the dramatic reunion, it was the dramatic "screw you" moment. The driver moved with purpose, ignoring the gaping partygoers as he approached my table in the corner. "Dr. Daniel?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes," I replied, not bothering to raise my voice. "Harvard University's AI Research Initiative sent me. You're needed for the announcement briefing in 2 hours." I felt every eye in that backyard on me, could practically hear the mental gears grinding as they processed what was happening. Dr. Daniel, Harvard. Important enough to send a car. Important enough to be summoned to a press briefing. "I'm ready," I said, turning to look at my mother. Her face had gone pale, glass frozen halfway to her lips like she'd blue-screened. Ellie stood next to her, mouth slightly open in a pose less flattering than any of her curated Instagram shots. Dad was doing that thing with his jaw that happened when he was trying not to look surprised. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once at my parents and walked to the car. Nothing says, "I've succeeded beyond your wildest expectations," quite like being whisked away by a fancy car in the middle of someone else's celebration. As I slid into the back seat, I caught Uncle Jim raising his glass to me from across the yard. The press briefing was about our breakthrough in neural network architecture and its implications for data security. Nothing I couldn't have rescheduled, but Abernathy understood the situation and had arranged for the university's executive car service as his own subtle middle finger to my family. "Sometimes science needs a little theater," he'd told me when I'd mentioned the graduation party, especially when dealing with people who don't understand science. But wait, it gets better. When I returned to my hotel that night, I had a text message from a number I didn't recognize. It's your cousin Megan. Got your number from Uncle Jim. Need to talk to you about something important. Can I call you? I was curious enough to say yes. Megan had always been neutral territory in family politics. Not particularly close to me, but not openly hostile either. What she told me was better than any revenge I could have planned. That whole graduation party? It was fake, she said without preamble. Ellie failed 3 classes this semester. She still has 2 semesters left before she can graduate. Your mom staged that entire thing because all her friends' kids are graduating on time. Are you serious? Deadly. I work in the registrar's office at UGA. Ellie's on academic probation. That Morgan Stanley job? It's contingent on her graduating, which isn't happening anytime soon. They'll yank the offer when they find out. Your parents already took out a second mortgage on the house to cover her extended tuition and that party. Dad's insurance business is down 40% this year. The irony was too perfect. My sister, the golden child, had been living a lie this whole time. And my parents, rather than face reality, had thrown a fake graduation party, complete with professional photography and catering, all to keep face. How long have they known? I asked, trying to process this new information. Your parents? At least 2 months. Ellie got the news right after spring break. Your mom called the registrar's office personally to see if there were any special arrangements that could be made. She tried to donate money to the athletic department to make Ellie's grades disappear. It almost turned into a scandal. It was so pathetically on brand I couldn't even be surprised. The entire family dynamic was built on illusions. The successful insurance salesman who was actually drowning in debt. The perfect daughter who was actually failing out of college. The disappointed son who was actually revolutionizing his field. Thanks for telling me, I said to Megan. You deserve to know. Also, that car thing today? Legendary. Aunt Karen is still having a meltdown about it. Called me asking if I knew you worked at Harvard now. I laughed for what felt like the first time in years. Let her keep wondering. The next morning, I had an email from my mother. The subject line read, "So proud of you." The body was brief. Darling, we had no idea you were doing such important work. Your father and I would love to hear all about it. Also, things have been a little tight lately with Ellie's tuition and the party expenses. If you're in a position to help the family out, we'd be so grateful. Love, Mom. No apology. Just a cash grab now that they knew I was successful. The nerves of this woman were truly impressive. I waited 2 days before calling her. Just long enough for her to think I might actually be considering it. Just long enough for her to start planning how she'd spend my money. Daniel, I'm so glad you called. We were all so impressed by— Cut the shit, Mom, I interrupted. I know about Ellie. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture. What about Ellie? Her voice had that dangerous edge it got when her perfect facade was threatened. I know she failed her classes. I know she's not graduating. I know the whole party was staged. More silence then. Who told you that? Was it Jim? He's always been jealous of— It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is you're still playing the same games. Still creating the same false narratives. And now you want my money to fund them. That's not fair. We've supported both our children. I actually laughed. The absurdity was too much. Supported? You threw a fake graduation party for Ellie that probably cost more than my annual rent while I was eating ramen for months because you couldn't be bothered to help with my apartment deposit. We would have helped if you'd stayed in school. You chose to leave. And now I'm with a position at Harvard while Ellie's on academic probation. Funny how that worked out. I could hear her grinding her teeth through the phone, probably worried about what this would do to her standing in the neighborhood gossip hierarchy. The thought of having to explain to her tennis friends why Ellie wasn't actually working at Morgan Stanley in the fall was probably giving her hives. Her entire identity was wrapped up in having the perfect daughter with the perfect life. The reality didn't fit the narrative she'd been crafting for 2 decades. So, you won't help your family? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing in the last 5 years. The silence told me everything I needed to know. She was probably mentally scrolling through a list of imaginary sacrifices, trying to find one that sounded plausible. Don't contact me again. Not for money, not for holidays, not for anything. We're done. I hung up and blocked her new number too. Took about 30 seconds before I got a text from my dad's phone. Didn't even read it, just blocked that one too. This wasn't a negotiation or a discussion. It was a severance. Uncle Jim texted me later that day. Heard you nuked the bridge. About time. Drinks on me next time you're in town. Zach chimed in next. So, did you cave and Venmo them for Ellie's tuition emergency fund? I replied, does MIT offer a degree in no? Zach, LMAO. That's my boy. I never attended another family event. never responded to the sudden flood of interest from relatives who had written me off. My success wasn't their story to claim, and their failures weren't my problem to fix. The invitations kept coming for a while. Holidays, birthdays, random family gatherings. Each one went straight into the trash. The texts from Ellie started angry, turned manipulative, and eventually stopped completely. She'd spent her entire life being the favorite. She had no idea how to exist in a world where that didn't matter. The best part? 6 months later, Zach and I sold our first algorithm patent. The check had enough zeros to make my eyes water. I bought exactly two things to celebrate: a high-end coffee machine and a plane ticket for Uncle Jim to visit Boston. The rest went into investments. 2 years in, my investments had quadrupled. I bought a brownstone in Cambridge. Cash, no mortgage. While my parents were secretly refinancing their house to cover Ellie's repeated attempts at finishing college. Meanwhile, my algorithm was being licensed by 3 companies, each paying more annually than my dad made in 5 years selling insurance. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't proving people wrong. It's living your life so completely on your own terms that their opinions become irrelevant. And occasionally, it's watching karma deliver exactly what they deserve in real time. I still work too much. Still check my code more carefully than I check my interpersonal relationships. But I'm building something that matters, surrounded by people who see me for who I am, not who they wish I was. Story 3. This story is titled, My Fiancé Threatened to Call Off Our Wedding if I didn't meet her demands, so I ended things right there. Alright, so let me set the stage for you. I'm just a regular guy from a tiny town in Montana. Picture this: one main road, a diner that doubles as the gossip hub, and a Walmart that everyone treats like the mall. That's where I grew up, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Life was slow and simple, and that's how I liked it. My family wasn't rich, but we weren't struggling either. My dad ran an auto repair shop, and my mom worked part-time at the local diner while keeping us kids in line. They were old school, salt-of-the-earth kind of people. My dad used to say, "You don't spend money you don't have, and you don't borrow unless you're out of options." Mom was the same. If we couldn't afford something, we didn't need it. No whining, no shortcuts, just hard work and patience. Growing up, I learned how to save early. My first job was mowing lawns for neighbors in the summer, and instead of blowing the money on video games like my friends, I'd stash most of it away. By the time I graduated high school, I had a couple thousand saved up, which felt like a fortune at 18. College wasn't a big flashy deal for me either. I went to a state school nearby, working part-time at a hardware store to cover my expenses. My degree was in information technology, nothing glamorous, but it got me a steady job as a network technician after graduation. It wasn't the kind of job that makes people go, wow, but it paid well, and I didn't dread going to work. By the time I hit 31, I was living the life I thought I wanted. I had a little apartment, a 10-year-old pickup that still ran great, and a decent savings account. I wasn't into flashy stuff. I bought my clothes on sale, cooked most of my meals at home, and didn't care about keeping up with trends. Life was simple, and I was content. Now, I'll admit, my dating life was nothing to write home about. I'd had a few girlfriends over the years, but nothing serious. Most of them wanted to move to the city or live a lifestyle I couldn't and didn't want to afford. That was fine by me. I figured the right person would come along eventually, someone who liked the same simple life I did. And then came Tina. I met Tina at a friend's house. My buddy Jake had just moved into a new house, and he threw a little get-together to celebrate. I wasn't planning to meet anyone that day. I showed up in a flannel shirt and jeans, carrying a six-pack of soda, just looking to hang out with my friends. Tina walked in like she owned the place. She was wearing this flowy dress and sunglasses that looked like they cost more than my truck. She had this air about her, like she was used to being noticed. I remember thinking, she's way out of my league, but somehow we ended up talking. Turns out she was Jake's girlfriend's coworker, visiting from the city. I don't even remember how the conversation started, but I do remember being surprised at how easy it was to talk to her. She wasn't as intimidating as she looked. She laughed at my jokes and said she liked how laid back I was. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. Tina seemed different from the other women I'd dated. She told me she was tired of the city and loved how real everything felt in my town. She said she admired how I didn't try to impress anyone and how I seemed to know exactly what I wanted out of life. For a while, I believed her. Tina started visiting more often. She loved the quiet mornings when we'd sit on my porch drinking coffee, and she didn't seem to mind that I lived in a small, no-frills apartment. She even came fishing with me a couple of times, though she wasn't great at it. She laughed at herself when she tangled the line or dropped the bait, and I thought, this is it. She gets me. We dated for 2 years, and during that time, I thought everything was perfect. Sure, Tina had her moments. She'd occasionally complain about how boring the town was, or how she missed her favorite sushi place in the city, but she always followed it up with something like, "But it's worth it to be with you." To be honest, I should have seen the cracks forming. For example, Tina would always joke about how she couldn't wait for me to get a better truck. She'd laugh and say, "Imagine us pulling up to a fancy restaurant in this thing." At the time, I thought it was just her sense of humor. Now, I wonder if it was a hint of what was coming. Then, there was the way she'd talk about her life before we met. She'd drop casual comments about the designer clothes her parents used to buy her, or the fancy vacations she took as a kid. I didn't think much of it. I figured that was just her upbringing, and it didn't mean she was materialistic. But for every moment Tina spent being supportive and down to earth, there were little moments that made me pause. Like when she insisted we go to the nicest restaurant in town for our 1 year anniversary, even though she knew I was saving for a down payment on a house. Or when she rolled her eyes at the off-brand watch I bought her for her birthday, even though she said she loved it. Still, I ignored the red flags. I thought we balanced each other out, me being practical and her being more adventurous. I figured that's what relationships were about, meeting in the middle. So, when I decided to propose, I wanted it to reflect us, or at least what I thought us was. I spent weeks searching for the perfect ring. Instead of going to some big box jewelry store, I went to a small jeweler in town who made custom pieces. I picked out a beautiful gold band with a small, vibrant sapphire in the center. It wasn't massive, but it was unique and meaningful. I thought it captured Tina perfectly. Classy, but understated. The proposal itself was simple, just like I knew Tina would want. I took her out to the lake where we'd gone fishing on one of our first dates. It was a quiet, sunny afternoon, and we were sitting on the dock, feet dangling over the water. I pulled out the ring, said a few heartfelt words, and asked her to marry me. I really thought I'd nailed it. Everything about the moment felt perfect. Simple, heartfelt, and meaningful. She'd always said she loved that about me, how I didn't need to make a big show of things. So, when she teared up and said yes, hugging me like she never wanted to let go, I felt like the luckiest guy alive. At first, she seemed over the moon about the ring. She kept holding up her hand, twisting it in the light, and saying how much she loved it. "It's perfect," she said again and again. "No one else has anything like this. You really get me." The first week after the proposal was like living in a dream. Tina was telling all her friends about how thoughtful I was, and how much the ring meant to her. I'd catch her snapping pictures of it on her hand, sharing them with her best friends, and smiling like a kid who just got their favorite toy. She'd hug me out of nowhere and say things like, "You're amazing, you know that?" It made me feel like I'd done everything right. But then, slowly, little things started to make me wonder. For one, she was showing the ring to everyone. Her co-workers, her girlfriends, even her yoga instructor, but not to her family. It came up when we visited her parents for dinner about 2 weeks after the proposal. I'd assumed she'd be just as excited to show them as she was with everyone else, but she didn't even bring it up. When her mom asked, "So, let's see the ring," Tina hesitated, her hand instinctively going to her lap. "Oh, it's not really, she started, before finally holding it up with a forced smile. Her mom examined it, tilting her head. It's nice. Very different." "Yeah," Tina said quickly, slipping her hand back down. "It's unique, you know? Not your typical diamond." Her dad didn't even look up from his steak, but her mom gave me a tight smile and said, "Well, if you two are happy, that's all that matters." Tina didn't say much after that, and the ride home was quiet. I asked her if everything was okay, and she shrugged it off. "Yeah, it's just my mom. She's always weird about stuff like that." I didn't push it, but it nagged at me. Why did it feel like she was embarrassed? Then there was the local community center I suggested for the wedding. It's a beautiful space that's affordable and has a lot of character. I thought it would be perfect for us. Big enough to fit all our family and friends, but not so massive that it'd feel over the top. Plus, it had these gorgeous wooden beams and big windows that let in tons of natural light. I brought Tina to see it one Saturday, thinking she'd love it. She walked around politely, nodding at all the details I pointed out, but her excitement wasn't there. "What do you think?" I asked, trying to gauge her reaction. "It's nice," she said after a pause, but there was a hint of hesitation in her voice she couldn't hide. "Just nice?" I pressed, laughing a little to lighten the mood. She shrugged. "I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's just, I don't know. It's not what I imagined, you know? But if it's what works, then that's fine." I felt a pang of disappointment. I'd been so sure this place would be a perfect fit for us, but her lukewarm response made me second-guess myself. Still, I told myself it was just a matter of adjusting expectations. Maybe she'd warm up to the idea once we started planning more details. After all, Tina kept telling me she loved how I kept things grounded and practical. That was part of what brought us together, or so I thought. There were other moments like that, little cracks in the perfect image she'd presented, One evening, when we were hanging out with her friends, one of them asked to see the ring. Tina held out her hand, and her friend gushed about how unique it was. "Oh my gosh, it's so you," her friend said. Tina smiled, but it was more subdued than usual. "Yeah, he really put a lot of thought into it," she said. Her tone was off, like she was trying to sound enthusiastic, but wasn't quite pulling it off. It felt like she was playing along for my benefit, and it left me with this gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. Still, I brushed it off. I figured maybe I was overthinking things. Wedding planning is stressful, right? Maybe she just had a lot on her plate. But as time went on, those little moments added up. Tina would rave about the ring and the proposal to some people, but downplay it with others, like she was trying to manage expectations depending on who she was talking to. I remember overhearing her on the phone with her sister one night. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I couldn't help catching snippets of the conversation. "Yeah, it's different," she said, her voice low. "Not what I expected, but no, I mean, it's fine. He really tried, and that's what matters, right?" That stung. I'd thought she genuinely loved the ring and everything it represented, but hearing her talk about it like that made me wonder if she was just putting on a show for me. At the time, I didn't know what to make of it. I wanted to believe she was just dealing with pressure from her family or friends, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Tina wasn't being entirely honest about how she felt. The thing is, she never outright complained. She didn't demand a different ring or insist we book some extravagant venue, but there was a subtle, unspoken disappointment that I couldn't ignore. It was in the way she hesitated when someone asked about the ring, the way she looked around the community center, like she was forcing herself to see potential, the way she always seemed to deflect when I asked her what she wanted. At the time, I chalked it up to nerves or stress. After all, planning a wedding is a big deal, and Tina had always seemed so supportive of my practical approach to life. I figured we'd work through it together, but now I wonder if those little moments were warning signs of what was to come. If Tina's true feelings were starting to peek through, even if she wasn't ready to say them out loud. And then, little by little, things started to shift. It began with the guest list. I'd assumed we'd keep it small, just close family and friends, maybe 50 people tops. Tina and I both come from pretty big families, but I thought we could find a way to pare it down. When I brought it up, Tina seemed on board. "Yeah, that sounds good," she said. "We don't need a massive crowd. It's about us, not anyone else." Great, I thought. We're on the same page. But a week later, she handed me a rough draft of the guest list, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. It had over 200 names on it. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the list. "It's just a starting point," Tina said, smiling like she hadn't just doubled our head count. "Tina, this is 4 times the number we talked about." She shrugged. "I couldn't leave anyone out. I mean, my parents have a lot of friends, and they'd be offended if we didn't invite them. And then there's my coworkers, plus some of my college friends." I frowned. "Do you even talk to half these people?" "Not all the time," she admitted. "But it would be rude not to invite them. Plus, the more people we invite, the more gifts we get, right?" She laughed like it was a joke, but I wasn't so sure. "Gifts aren't the point, Tina," I said. "We can't afford a wedding for 200 people. We'll figure it out," she said breezily. "It's not like everyone will show up anyway." I let it go for the moment, thinking we'd revisit the list and trim it down later. But deep down, I started to feel like I was losing control of the wedding plans. Then there was the venue. After the lukewarm reaction to the community center, Tina began showing me pictures of other places, ones that looked like they belonged in a movie, not a small-town wedding. One was a vineyard with sprawling gardens and chandeliers in the ballroom. Another was a fancy hotel downtown with a rooftop terrace and city views. "These are just ideas," Tina said, scrolling through the pictures on her phone. "They're beautiful," I admitted, "but they're way out of our budget." She sighed. "I know, but don't you think it would be amazing to get married somewhere like this? It's our wedding. It should feel special." "It will feel special," I said. "It's not about the venue. It's about us." Tina gave me a tight smile. "I know. I just want it to be memorable, that's all." I could tell she wasn't happy, but she didn't push it further that night. Still, the seed had been planted. As the weeks went on, her expectations kept creeping up. First, it was the guest list and the venue. Then it was the food. "What about a buffet?" I suggested one evening while we were going over catering options. "It's affordable and people can pick what they like." "Buffets are so casual," Tina said, wrinkling her nose. "Don't you think a plated dinner would be nicer?" "Sure, if we could afford it," I said. "But a sit-down dinner for 200 people would cost a fortune." "We don't have to go overboard," she said. "Just a couple of courses, maybe steak or salmon." "Tina, do you know how much that would cost?" "We'll figure it out," she said again, her favorite phrase lately. It was the same with the entertainment. I suggested hiring a DJ, someone local who could play a mix of our favorite songs. Tina wanted a live band. DJs are fine for a birthday party, she said. But this is a wedding. A live band would make it so much more elegant. Do you know how expensive live bands are? She sighed. It's just an idea. I'm not saying we have to do it, but wouldn't it be nice? Every conversation felt like this. Her suggesting something extravagant and me reminding her we couldn't afford it. She always said she understood, but I could tell she was disappointed. It wasn't anything she said outright, but it was in the way her smile would falter or how she'd change the subject. The turning point came when Tina casually brought up the idea of hiring a wedding planner. I think it would help take some of the stress off us, she said one night while we were having dinner. Tina, wedding planners are expensive, I said. But they save you money in the long run, she argued. They know how to negotiate with vendors and stuff. I think we can handle it ourselves, I said. It's not like we're planning a royal wedding. Tina gave me a look I couldn't quite read. I just don't want to feel overwhelmed, she said quietly. I felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe I was being too rigid. Tina had a demanding job, and I knew she wanted the wedding to be special. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that her idea of special was getting further and further from what we'd originally talked about. The final straw, at least for this chapter, came when I caught her scrolling through pictures of engagement rings on her phone. Looking for ideas for someone else? I teased, peeking over her shoulder. She quickly locked the screen and gave me a nervous laugh. No, just browsing. For what? I asked, confused. Nothing, she said quickly. I didn't press her, but it stuck with me. Later that night, when she went to the bathroom, I couldn't resist sneaking a peek at her phone. The search history was full of diamond engagement rings and how to upgrade your engagement ring. I'd spent months saving for her ring, thinking it was exactly what she wanted. She'd told me how much she loved it, how thoughtful and unique it was. And now she was secretly looking for something bigger and flashier? I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it was hard to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. This was the moment I started to realize that the Tina I thought I knew, the one who loved my small-town values and didn't care about material things, might not have been entirely real. As time went on, Tina's true colors became harder and harder to ignore, starting with the bridal party. At first, Tina told me she wanted her bridesmaids to pick their own dresses within a certain color scheme. I thought that was thoughtful and practical. She'd always said she didn't want to burden her friends financially, but apparently that plan didn't last long. One night, she came home with a handful of bridal magazines and a Pinterest board full of ideas. "Look at these," she said, excitedly shoving the magazines in my face. I flipped through the pages, noticing the designer labels on every dress. "These are nice," I said hesitantly. "But they look expensive." "Well, yeah," Tina said, as if it were obvious. "They're Vera Wang. You can't go wrong with a classic designer dress." For you or the bridesmaids?" I asked, already sensing where this was headed. "For the bridesmaids," she said casually, like it was no big deal. "Tina, those dresses are going to cost hundreds of dollars each," I said. "Are you sure your friends can afford that?" She shrugged. "They'll figure it out. It's one day, and it's important to me that everything looks cohesive. Plus, they'll have a beautiful dress they can wear again." "Tina, most people don't wear bridesmaid dresses again. It's not exactly practical." She rolled her eyes. "Why do you always have to be so negative? It's my wedding, and this is what I want. They'll understand." I didn't argue further, but the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't just about the money. It was the way she seemed to expect her friends to bend over backward for her, no matter what. The next blow came with the bachelorette party. I thought she'd do something simple, like a night out with her friends, or a weekend at a cabin. But Tina had other ideas. "We're going to Miami," she announced one evening, grinning from ear to ear. "Miami?" I repeated, stunned. "Yeah, a long weekend on the beach with my girls. It'll be so much fun." "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "Well, yeah," she said with a laugh. "But it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. They'll understand." "Did you talk to your friends about it?" "Not yet," she admitted. "But I already booked the villa. They'll figure it out." "Tina, what if some of them can't afford it?" "Then they're not real friends," she said flatly. "If they cared about me, they'd make it work." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Tina I thought I knew, the one who said she loved my simple, practical approach to life. It was like she'd transformed into a completely different person, someone who cared more about appearances and extravagance than the people around her. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, Tina sat me down and told me she'd been talking to her parents about the wedding budget. I braced myself, knowing this conversation wasn't going to go well. "So," she began, "my parents think we should really consider taking out a loan to make sure we have the wedding we deserve." I blinked, trying to process what she'd just said. "A loan? For the wedding?" "Yeah," she said, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "It's not like we can't pay it off later. It's just to make sure everything is perfect. Tina, we've talked about this. I don't want to start our marriage in debt. It's not that big of a deal, she said, waving me off. Everyone does it. No, they don't, I said firmly. And even if they did, I'm not doing it. I've worked hard to stay out of debt, and I'm not about to ruin that for one day. Tina's expression hardened. You're being so selfish, she snapped. This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and you're acting like it's a chore. I'm not being selfish, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm being practical. We don't need to spend a fortune to have a beautiful wedding. She crossed her arms and glared at me. Maybe you don't care about having a beautiful wedding, but I do. And if you loved me, you'd understand that. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe she was pulling the "if you loved me" card over something as ridiculous as taking out a loan for a wedding. Tina, this isn't about love. It's about being responsible. I'm not going into debt for this. And that's final. She didn't say anything, just stood up and stormed out of the room. For the next few days, we barely spoke. Tina was clearly furious with me, but I wasn't backing down. I'd made my stance clear, and I wasn't going to let her guilt me into changing my mind. Then, as if to twist the knife further, she started involving my family. One night at dinner, my sister Becca pulled me aside. Hey, she said, I was talking to Tina, and she mentioned you've been, a little stubborn about the wedding plans. Stubborn? I repeated, annoyed. She just wants to make it special, Becca said. You know how much this means to her. Don't you think you could loosen up a little? Loosen up? I said, my voice rising. She wants me to take out a loan, Becca. A loan? For a wedding, Becca frowned. Well, yeah, but it's not like you can't pay it off later. That's not the point, I said, feeling my frustration boil over. I'm not going into debt for one day, no matter how special it is. If Tina can't understand that, then maybe we have bigger problems. Becca didn't have much to say after that, but I could tell she didn't agree with me. Tina had clearly done a good job of spinning the situation to make me look like the bad guy. At this point, I was starting to feel like I didn't even recognize the woman I'd proposed to. The kind, supportive, down-to-earth Tina I thought I knew had been replaced by someone who cared more about appearances and status than the life we were supposed to be building together. The wedding was no longer about us. It was about her and what she wanted. And the more I tried to stand my ground, the more she seemed to resent me for it. I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. At this point, things were already on thin ice between me and Tina, but what happened next completely shattered whatever was left. The tension from all her demands and our fights had been building, but I still thought we might be able to work through it. I was wrong. It started with Tina asking me to come over to her parents' house for dinner. This wasn't unusual. We'd had dinner with her parents before. But this time, something felt off. She was overly sweet about inviting me, saying things like, "It's just a casual dinner. My parents want to talk about the wedding plans. Nothing serious." I should have trusted my gut because when I walked into their house that night, I could tell immediately that something was up. Her mom and dad were sitting in the living room with these overly polite smiles plastered on their faces. Tina's dad, a guy who rarely said 2 words to me before, suddenly acted like he was all buddy-buddy. "Ah, there he is," he said, clapping me on the back. "The man of the hour." I gave a small smile, not sure where this was going. Tina grabbed my arm and led me to the couch, sitting closer than usual. That was my second clue. Something was off. Tina usually wasn't big on PDA around her parents. Her mom brought out drinks, and we made small talk for a while. It was awkward, but I chalked it up to wedding stress. After about 20 minutes, Tina's dad cleared his throat and leaned forward. "So," he started, "Tina's told us about some of the financial disagreements you two have been having." I glanced at Tina, confused. She gave me this tight-lipped smile, like she was trying to encourage me to play along. Yeah, we've been talking about the budget," I said. "I think we just have different ideas about how much we want to spend." Her dad chuckled, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh people use when they're about to say something they think is clever, but is really just condescending. "Well, son, a wedding isn't just a party. It's an investment. It's a reflection of your commitment to each other." "Right," I said slowly. "But I don't think starting a marriage in debt is the best way to reflect that commitment." Her mom chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Oh, but isn't it worth it to make Tina happy? She's always dreamed of a beautiful wedding. Don't you want to give her that?" I could feel my blood starting to boil. "Of course, I want her to be happy," I said. "But I also think we can have a beautiful wedding without spending money we don't have." Tina's dad leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "So, what I'm hearing is, you're not willing to step up for my daughter." That hit me, but I stayed calm. "No. What I'm saying is that I'm not willing to jeopardize our future for one day." Tina and I talked about having a simple, meaningful wedding, and that's what I thought we both wanted. Tina finally spoke up, her voice soft and almost pleading. "Babe, it's not about jeopardizing our future. It's about making memories, starting our life together in a way we can look back on and feel proud of. I turned to her, trying to keep my voice steady. Tina, I want those things too, but I don't think we need to spend a fortune to have them. We can make memories without going into debt. Her mom sighed dramatically. Oh, honey, sometimes men just don't understand. You're trying to create something magical, and that's hard for them to grasp. That was it. I'd had enough. I stood up, feeling the weight of their judgmental stares. With all due respect, I said, looking at her parents. This isn't about me not understanding. It's about priorities. I've worked hard to build a stable life, and I'm not going to throw that away for something we don't need. If that's not good enough for Tina, or for you, then maybe we need to reevaluate what this wedding is really about. Tina's dad stood up too, clearly trying to intimidate me. Reevaluate? What are you saying, boy? I'm saying, I replied, my voice firm, that I'm not going to be bullied into doing something I don't believe in. I love Tina, but I won't sacrifice my principles or my financial stability for anyone. The room went silent. Tina's mom looked like she'd just seen a ghost, and her dad's face turned bright red. Tina, on the other hand, looked absolutely stunned. You're overreacting, she finally said, her voice shaky. No, Tina, I'm not, I said, turning to face her. This has been building for weeks. You've been pushing for things you know I can't afford, and I've tried to compromise, but it's never enough. I can't do this anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't back down. If having your dream wedding is more important than building a life together, then maybe we're not right for each other. Tina, say something, her mom hissed. But Tina just stared at me, speechless. I grabbed my coat and turned to leave. I think it's best if we take some time to think about what we really want, I said. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. The next day, I packed up the few things Tina had left at my apartment and texted her to come pick them up. She didn't reply right away, but later that evening, she sent me a long message saying how hurt she was and how she couldn't believe I was giving up on us. I didn't respond. I knew there was no point. This wasn't about giving up. It was about refusing to be manipulated into something I didn't believe in. Standing my ground wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. I might have lost Tina, but I kept my dignity and my future. And honestly, that was worth a whole lot more than any wedding. Over the next few weeks, Tina's true nature became even more apparent. Through mutual friends, I learned she was telling people I was cheap and selfish for not agreeing to her wedding plans. Some of her friends reached out to me asking if it was true that I refused to pay for basic wedding expenses. I set the record straight with anyone who asked, but I didn't go out of my way to defend myself. People who really knew me wouldn't believe her nonsense anyway. What really blew my mind, though, was when I found out Tina was already dating someone new, a guy named Eric, who apparently worked as a lawyer and had a reputation for throwing money around. According to one of my buddies, Tina had been bragging about how Eric was willing to give her the life she deserved. And then, karma came knocking. About 2 months after our breakup, I ran into one of Tina's bridesmaids, her best friend Lily, at the grocery store. Lily and I had always gotten along, so I wasn't surprised when she stopped to chat. What did surprise me, though, was how quickly she brought up Tina. Have you heard about her and Eric? Lily asked, a knowing smirk on her face. No, I said cautiously. What about them? Lily grinned. Well, let's just say her dream wedding didn't exactly pan out. Apparently, Tina had been pushing Eric just as hard, if not harder, than she'd pushed me. She'd talked him into booking a massive venue, hiring a high-end wedding planner, and even buying her a new engagement ring. A diamond, of course. But when she started demanding an even bigger budget and throwing fits over minor details, Eric had had enough. He called off the wedding, Lily said, clearly trying not to laugh. And get this, he didn't just end the engagement. He dumped her entirely. I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated. I'd tried to tell Tina that her priorities were out of whack, but she wouldn't listen. Now she was facing the consequences of her action. Lily leaned in closer, like she was sharing a juicy secret. She's been telling everyone he was a jerk, and that he led her on. But between you and me, she did this to herself. I thanked Lily for the update and went on with my shopping, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Over the next few months, I threw myself into improving my life. I eventually bought a cozy little cabin just outside of town. It was exactly the kind of place I'd always dreamed of. Quiet, peaceful, and mine. Every now and then, I'd hear snippets about Tina through mutual friends. Apparently, she was struggling to find someone willing to meet her sky-high expectations. She'd gone on a few dates, but nothing ever lasted. One of my buddies joked that she'd probably end up marrying her credit card if it had a high enough limit. Looking back, I'm grateful for everything that happened with Tina. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I felt like giving in just to keep the peace. But standing my ground taught me an important lesson. Love isn't about bending over backward to meet someone else's unrealistic demands. It's about mutual respect, compromise, and building a life together. Tina may have thought she could bully and guilt me into giving her what she wanted, but in the end, she only showed me who she really was. And honestly, I'm thankful for that. Sometimes you have to go through the tough stuff to find out what really matters. For me, that meant walking away from Tina and choosing to put my own happiness and values first. And while it hurt at the time, it's a decision I'll never regret. Karma has a funny way of working things out, and seeing Tina's life unravel while mine got better was all the closure I needed. Story 4. My parents threatened to skip my wedding, unless I invited my sister who slept with my boyfriend. I never expected my life to take such a nosedive. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here, writing about how my sister and boyfriend destroyed everything I thought I knew, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am, trying to wrap my head around it all. So, my sister, Sarah, 26F, and I were super close growing up. We shared a room in our tiny house and used to talk about anything and everything. She was the more outgoing one, always into art, music, and whatever else grabbed her attention. Me? I was the quiet, bookish one, always with my nose in some novel or working on a project. Even though we were different, we had each other's backs. That's just how it was with us. Our parents, John, 55M, and Mary, 53F, always drilled it into us that family comes first, no matter what. And for the longest time, I believed that. Family over everything. Blood is thicker than water, all that stuff. But I guess that only works if everyone is playing by the same rules. I met Ryan, 30M, during my second year of college. He was a senior, and we clicked right away. He had this quiet confidence about him, and we bonded over our love of books. We'd spend hours talking about the classics, authors we loved, and random stuff like the weirdest quotes we could find in old novels. It didn't take long for me to fall hard. Ryan was smart, funny, and made me feel like I was the only person in the room whenever we were together. After I graduated, Ryan and I moved in together. We had this small apartment near the city, and I thought things were perfect. We'd started talking about our future, marriage, kids, all of it. Meanwhile, Sarah was doing her own thing. She didn't go to college, much to my parents' disappointment, but she was hustling, working jobs to support herself while chasing her art career. She was always bouncing between jobs, struggling to make ends meet, but I admired her determination. I thought, she'll figure it out eventually. I never thought there was any tension between Sarah and Ryan. In fact, they got along really well, which I was happy about. They had a lot in common, music, art, and all that creative stuff I never really got into. I thought it was cool that my sister and boyfriend could hang out and talk about things they both liked. But I guess I was blind to what was really going on. The day I found out, everything seemed normal. I'd been working on this huge presentation for my marketing job, something I'd been stressing about for weeks. I was running late that morning and realized I'd left my flash drive at home with all the files I needed. I panicked for a second, but then I remembered Sarah was staying with us for the week, so I called her. "Hey, can you do me a huge favor?" I asked, trying not to sound as frantic as I felt. "I left my flash drive at home. Could you send me the files? It's really important." Sarah was chill about it. "Yeah, no problem," she said. "I'll email them to you in a few minutes." Crisis averted, or so I thought. Later, I got a notification on my phone. Sarah had sent the files. But when I opened the email, there was something else in there. It wasn't the files I asked for right away. Instead, the subject line just said Ryan, and the email was some half-written draft she must have forgotten to delete. My heart started racing, but I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was probably nothing. But curiosity got the better of me. I scrolled down, and what I saw, it felt like the ground fell out from under me. There were messages, dozens of them, all between Sarah and Ryan. And they weren't just friendly texts either. They were intimate, flirty, detailed descriptions of meetups and inside jokes that only lovers share. And then I saw the part that hit me the hardest. "I can't wait to see you again tomorrow, Sarah. Last night was amazing." Last night. The night I was working late on my presentation, thinking my boyfriend was home watching TV and my sister was out with friends. Turns out they'd been together, doing God knows what behind my back. My stomach twisted. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to be sick right there at my desk. My hands were shaking as I scrolled further, reading more than I should have. I guess part of me wanted to find something, anything, to prove it wasn't what it looked like. But it was all there, laid out in black and white. They'd been sleeping together for months, 6 to be exact. 6 months of lies. I don't even remember how I got home that day. Everything was a blur. When I walked through the door of our apartment, Ryan was sitting on the couch, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. It made my blood boil. I didn't waste any time. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. I just threw my phone at him, literally, and told him to explain himself. He looked confused at first, like he had no idea what I was talking about. Then he picked up the phone, saw the messages, and his face went pale. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. Oh, here we go, I thought. The classic line. "Really?" I snapped, "because it looks like you've been screwing my sister for half a year." Ryan tried to come up with excuses. It was a mistake. We didn't mean for it to happen. It's not serious. But the more he talked, the angrier I got. Every word that came out of his mouth felt like another betrayal. Finally, he stopped trying to lie and just sat there, head down, admitting that everything I'd read was true. He said it was all innocent at first, late night talks when I was asleep, a shared love of art and music that turned into something more. I didn't care. I was done. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want to see you again." Ryan didn't argue. He grabbed his stuff and left. And just like that, the life I thought I was building with him crumbled to dust. But the worst part wasn't even him. It was Sarah, my own sister. After Ryan left, I sat there, trying to process what had just happened. But I couldn't. Not until I confronted Sarah. I had to hear it from her. I had to know why she'd done this to me. I drove to her place, my hands shaking the whole way. When she opened the door, she looked like she already knew. She didn't even try to lie like Ryan did. She just stood there, looking guilty, and said the words that broke me completely. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I love him." I couldn't believe it. My own sister. I couldn't even find the words to respond. I just turned around and left, tears streaming down my face as I realized the two people I trusted most had completely shattered my world. And that was it. That was the day I lost them both. I don't think I've ever felt as numb as I did driving away from Sarah's apartment that day. I had all these emotions boiling up inside of me: anger, betrayal, sadness, but I just felt empty. It was like I was floating through it all, watching my life fall apart in slow motion and not being able to do a damn thing about it. I parked my car at a random lot and just sat there for a while, trying to make sense of everything. How could they do this? How could she do this? Sarah was my sister, someone I trusted more than anyone in the world, and Ryan, well, I thought he was my future. It was like my whole life had been a lie, and I was the last one to find out. Eventually, I went back to the apartment I used to share with Ryan, and when I walked in, it felt so wrong. The place felt different, like it wasn't even mine anymore. I looked around at all the stuff we'd bought together, the couch we used to binge watch shows on, the pictures of us hanging on the walls, and it just hit me. None of that mattered now. Everything was tainted. I didn't even know where to start, but I knew one thing: I couldn't stay there. I didn't want to be in the same place where everything had happened. I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing in some clothes, my laptop, and anything else I thought I'd need for a few days. I couldn't bring myself to pack up everything. It felt too final, like I was officially admitting that my life with Ryan was over. While I was packing, Ryan came back. I heard the door open and I froze for a second. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear anything he had to say, but there he was, standing in the doorway, looking like he'd been run over by a truck. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream at him for what he'd done. But I was too tired, too drained to even get that angry anymore. "Please, just listen," he said, his voice all shaky. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just kept packing, my back to him. But he didn't get the hint. He walked closer, standing in the middle of the room like he didn't know what to do with himself. I made a mistake, he said, and I felt my blood pressure rising. A mistake? Seriously? That's what he was going with? Like this was some little slip-up he could apologize for, and we could just move past it? I dropped the bag on the floor and turned around to face him. A mistake? You slept with my sister for 6 months, Ryan. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Over and over again. He looked down at his feet like a scolded kid. I know, he mumbled. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened. I wanted to laugh in his face. It just happened? That's what people say when they spill a drink or miss a bus, not when they betray the person they claim to love by sleeping with their sister. What do you want me to say? I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. What can you possibly say that's going to make this better? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it again, like he didn't have an answer. Because there wasn't an answer. Nothing he could say was going to undo what he did. Nothing was going to fix it. I'm sorry, he whispered. I rolled my eyes. Sorry, that's it? He looked desperate now, like he was grasping at straws. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just confused. Sarah and we connected over stuff, and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and I'm sorry. I messed up. Yeah, you messed up, I snapped, my voice louder now. You didn't just mess up, Ryan. You broke my trust. You broke me. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I didn't want to cry in front of him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how much he'd hurt me. Ryan stepped closer, reaching out like he was going to touch me, but I backed away, holding up my hand. Don't, I said, my voice cracking. Just don't. He stopped, his arm falling to his side, and we stood there in silence for what felt like forever. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I just wanted him gone. You need to leave, I finally said. Can we at least talk about this? He asked, his voice pleading. I don't want to lose you. I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you make when everything's so messed up that it doesn't even feel real anymore. You lost me the moment you decided to sleep with my sister, I said, wiping my eyes. There's nothing left to talk about. We're done. Ryan stood there, looking like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just nodded, his shoulders slumped, and turned to leave. As the door clicked shut behind him, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because he was finally gone, and sadness because this was it. This was the end of everything we'd built together. I sat down on the bed, staring at the half-packed bag on the floor. My mind was racing, but at the same time, I felt this weird numbness, like my brain was trying to protect me from feeling too much at once. I knew I had to move forward, had to start figuring out what came next, but right then, I was just stuck in that moment, trying to wrap my head around everything that had just gone down. I texted my friend Emily, asking if I could crash at her place for a while. I couldn't stay here. Not after what happened. I needed to get out, get some space to clear my head, and figure out my next move. Emily didn't ask questions. She just said, "Of course, come over whenever you're ready." I stuffed the rest of my clothes into the duffel bag, grabbed my essentials, and left the apartment, not even bothering to look back. I wasn't sure when I'd be back to get the rest of my stuff, but I knew I couldn't stay there another second. That place wasn't my home anymore. It hadn't been since the moment I found out what Ryan and Sarah had done. As I drove to Emily's, I kept replaying everything in my head. The emails, the lies, the look on Ryan's face when I confronted him. Sarah's empty apology. It was like I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. By the time I got to Emily's, I was completely drained. She gave me a hug, told me I could stay as long as I needed, and didn't press me for details. I was grateful for that. I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Not really. That night, as I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, I tried to focus on anything other than the pain that was threatening to swallow me whole. But it was impossible. The betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all too fresh, too raw. I didn't know what the next day would bring or how I was going to move forward from this. All I knew was that I had to keep going, even if it felt like I was falling apart. Because what else could I do? I stayed at Emily's place for the next few days, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life now. It's crazy how your whole world can just collapse in an instant, and you're left picking up the pieces, not even sure how to start. I didn't want to face my family yet, especially not my parents. I knew I'd have to tell them eventually, but I wasn't ready for their reaction. I just needed time to process everything without having to deal with all the extra drama that would come with it. But of course, life doesn't give you that time. After a few days of silence, my phone started blowing up. Missed calls, texts, voicemails from my mom and dad. I knew what they wanted. They wanted to know why I wasn't answering, why I hadn't been home, why I wasn't picking up. They probably figured something was wrong but had no clue just how messed up everything had gotten. I finally caved and called my mom back. The second she answered, I could tell she'd been worried sick. Her voice had that frantic, "What's going on?" tone, and I could practically hear her pacing around the house. "Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for days. Why haven't you called back? Are you okay?" She fired off all these questions, barely giving me time to respond. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I'm fine. I've just been dealing with some stuff." "What stuff?" she asked, sounding confused. There was no easy way to say it, so I just blurted it out. Ryan and Sarah were having an affair. Silence. It was like the air got sucked out of the room, and for a few seconds, I didn't hear anything on the other end of the line. I almost thought the call had dropped, but then Mom spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" I repeated myself, feeling the words sting again as I said them. "Sarah and Ryan. They were hooking up behind my back for 6 months." I could hear Mom's sharp intake of breath. "Are you sure?" she asked, like she couldn't believe what I was telling her, like somehow I'd gotten it all wrong. "Yeah, I'm sure," I said, my voice harder than I meant it to be. "I saw the emails, Mom. I confronted them both. They admitted it." More silence. I could tell she was struggling to process what I just told her. I mean, who wouldn't be? It wasn't like this was some small thing. This was the ultimate betrayal, and I knew it was going to hit her hard. I don't know what to say," she finally managed. "How could this happen? Sarah, your own sister?" "Yeah, I know," I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Believe me, I'm just as shocked as you are." At that point, I could hear my dad in the background, asking what was going on. Mom must have put me on speaker because the next thing I knew, Dad's voice came booming through the phone. "What's all this about?" he demanded. I sighed, knowing I'd have to explain the whole thing again. So I did. I laid it all out for them. How I found the emails, how Ryan and Sarah had been sneaking around behind my back, how I'd confronted them and kicked Ryan out. By the time I was done, I was emotionally drained all over again, like ripping open a wound that hadn't even begun to heal yet. Dad was quiet for a long time after I finished. I could almost picture him sitting there, jaw clenched, hands gripping the armrests of his chair. He wasn't the type to blow up right away, but when he got mad, you knew it. And this? This was definitely something that would make him mad. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled. "That son of a bitch," he said, each word slow and deliberate. "And your sister? How could she do this to you?" "I don't know, Dad," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know." I thought for a second they'd be as furious as I was, that they'd be on my side, comforting me, maybe even cutting Sarah off like I had. But then, Mom spoke up again, and everything took a turn I didn't see coming. "Maybe you should talk to her," she said softly. "See if you can work this out." I froze. "What?" "I mean, she's your sister," Mom continued, sounding like she was tiptoeing around the conversation. "I'm not excusing what she did. What she and Ryan did was awful, but maybe you two can find a way to fix things. Family's important, you know that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd just told them how Sarah had stabbed me in the back in the worst way possible, and their first instinct was to get me to forgive her? To fix things? Are you serious? I asked, my voice rising. She slept with my boyfriend, Mom. She betrayed me. How am I supposed to just work it out with her? I'm not saying you have to forgive her right away, Mom said, clearly uncomfortable. But she's your sister. You two have been close your whole lives. I hate to see this tear you apart. Tear us apart? It wasn't like we had a simple fight. This wasn't something that could just be patched up with a few apologies and a family dinner. Sarah had destroyed our relationship. There was no coming back from that, at least not anytime soon. I don't think you understand how badly she hurt me, I said, my voice shaking. She's not my sister anymore. Not after this. Dad finally chimed in again. Look, I get that you're angry and you have every right to be, he said, his voice still calm but firm. But what your mom's trying to say is, don't make any decisions you can't take back. Sarah's family. You might hate her right now, but at the end of the day, she's still your sister. Maybe one day you'll be able to find some sort of peace with this. I felt like I was going crazy. Here I was, hurting more than I ever had in my life, and they were worried about keeping the family together? Where was the outrage? Where was the support? I needed them to be on my side to see how broken I was. But all I was getting was, she's still your sister and family is everything. I'd had enough. I can't do this right now, I said, my voice tight. I need some space. I'll talk to you guys later. I hung up before they could say anything else. I was shaking, trying to hold back the tears. I couldn't believe it. My parents, my own parents, were more concerned about me forgiving Sarah than they were about what she'd done to me. It felt like they were choosing her, like they were telling me my feelings didn't matter. And that hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. After that call, I knew things were going to be different. It wasn't just Sarah and Ryan who'd betrayed me. In a way, my parents had too. They weren't on my side. They were just trying to keep the peace, and I wasn't interested in peace right now. I was interested in surviving, in figuring out how to get through this without falling apart completely. I didn't know what the next steps were, but one thing was clear. I was on my own. After that call with my parents, I felt more alone than ever. I mean, I knew things were already messed up, but hearing them try to push me toward forgiveness, like it was that simple, just made everything worse. I thought I could at least count on them to understand how broken I was, but they just didn't get it. It's like they were so focused on keeping the family together that they couldn't see how much I needed them to support me, not Sarah. I stayed with Emily for a while longer, trying to get my head on straight. I had no idea how to even begin putting my life back together. The person I thought I was going to marry had betrayed me. My sister, the person I trusted the most, had betrayed me, and my parents. They were basically telling me to suck it up and get over it. I wasn't ready to deal with any of it, but I knew I couldn't hide forever. One night, while I was zoning out on the couch at Emily's, she brought up something I hadn't thought about yet. You know, you're going to have to get the rest of your stuff from the apartment at some point, she said carefully, like she didn't want to push me too hard, but knew it had to be said. She was right. I couldn't just avoid the apartment forever, no matter how much I wanted to. All my things were still there, and I had to figure out how to move on. But the thought of going back to that place, the place where everything fell apart, made me sick to my stomach. So, a few days later, Emily and I drove over to the apartment. I hadn't been back since the day I kicked Ryan out, and walking through the door was like stepping into a time capsule of everything I'd lost. We managed to pack most of my things by the end of the day, but I still had this feeling of unfinished business. Like even though I'd gotten all my stuff out, I hadn't fully let go yet. The apartment, Ryan, Sarah, it all still had this hold on me, and I hated it. When we finally got back to Emily's, I felt a little lighter, but I still wasn't sure what my next move was. I couldn't go back to that apartment, but I didn't want to keep imposing on Emily forever. I needed to start making some real changes to move on from this chapter of my life, even if it felt impossible at the moment. It was around that time I met Alex. We were introduced through some mutual friends at a casual get-together, and at first, I wasn't really in the mood for socializing. I mean, after everything that had happened, the last thing on my mind was meeting someone new. But Alex was different. He didn't push, didn't pry into what had happened. He was just easy to talk to. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in a long time. I remember one night we were all sitting around, and Alex started telling this ridiculous story about his dog getting into his neighbor's yard and causing absolute chaos. It was stupid and silly, but it was the first time I genuinely laughed since everything fell apart. I didn't realize how much I needed that. Lies how. We started hanging out more, just as friends at first, and I appreciated that he wasn't in any rush to make things more serious. It was nice having someone to talk to, someone who wasn't involved in all the drama of my past. He knew what had happened with Ryan and Sarah. He'd heard it from our mutual friends, but he never pushed me to talk about it unless I wanted to. He was patient, giving me the space I needed to figure things out. Eventually, things did start getting more serious with Alex, but it was different this time. I wasn't rushing into anything. After what had happened with Ryan, I had major trust issues, and Alex knew that. He didn't push me to move faster than I was comfortable with, which made all the difference. Slowly, I started to feel like maybe there was a future for me after all, even if it wasn't the one I'd originally planned. But just as I was starting to feel like I was getting my life back on track, my parents threw another wrench into things. They knew I was seeing Alex, and they were happy for me, but they just couldn't let go of the whole Sarah situation. Every time I talked to them, they found some way to bring her up, like it was their mission to make me forgive her. You know, Sarah's been struggling, Mom would say during one of our phone calls. She's been through a lot since everything happened. She misses you. I wanted to scream. I knew Sarah was struggling. I wasn't blind to it. But that didn't change what she did. And yet, every time I talked to my parents, it was like they were trying to guilt me into letting her back into my life. They just couldn't seem to understand that I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I'd never be ready for that. It got to the point where I was dreading talking to them. Every conversation turned into some sort of passive-aggressive guilt trip about Sarah and how family is forever and everyone makes mistakes. But I was tired of hearing it. I was tired of them trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed, at least not right now. I had to put some distance between us. I stopped answering their calls as much, and when I did talk to them, I kept it short. I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just couldn't handle the constant pressure anymore. I needed space to figure out what I wanted, not what they wanted from me. I was moving forward, but it was on my own terms. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. As time went by, my relationship with Alex became more serious, and eventually, he proposed. I was over the moon, and we soon started planning our wedding. I thought wedding planning would be all about picking flowers, deciding on cake flavors, and finding the perfect dress. You know, the stuff you see in movies. But for me, it was like walking through a minefield. The closer we got to the big day, the more my parents turned it into a constant battle. And of course, the main problem was Sarah. From the start, I knew it was going to be tricky with her. After everything that had happened with Ryan, the last thing I wanted was Sarah anywhere near my wedding. I mean, she betrayed me in the worst way possible. The idea of having her there, standing around like nothing happened, made my skin crawl. But of course, my parents had a completely different view. They had started making little comments here and there like, "Have you thought about inviting Sarah?" Or, "It would be nice to have the whole family together." At first, I ignored it. I figured they'd eventually get the hint and drop it, but they didn't. In fact, it seemed like the closer we got to the wedding, the more they pushed. One afternoon, my mom and dad came over to help finalize some wedding details, or at least that's what I thought. We sat down with the guest list, and my mom had this weird look on her face the whole time. I could tell something was coming, but I wasn't ready for what she said next. "So, we've been thinking," she started, her voice too casual for the way she was fidgeting with the paper in her hands. "We really think it would be a mistake not to invite Sarah to the wedding." I froze. I'd been waiting for this conversation, but I still wasn't ready for it. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "we've talked about this. Sarah isn't invited. I'm not comfortable with her being there." My dad chimed in then, his voice firm, like he was trying to reason with me. "She's your sister. Don't you think you two can at least try to work things out? It's your wedding. It should be a time for family to come together. I took a deep breath, already feeling the tension rise in my chest. Dad, this is my wedding. I don't want to spend the whole day feeling uncomfortable because she's there. It's supposed to be a happy day for me and Alex, not a reunion where I'm forced to forgive her just because it's family. But they didn't stop there. My mom leaned forward, her tone turning soft, almost pleading. Sweetie, Sarah's been struggling. She regrets what happened, and this could be a chance to start fresh. We just don't want this rift to last forever. I could feel my patience slipping. This isn't about starting fresh. She slept with my boyfriend. It's not something I can just get over because it's convenient for the wedding. I'm not ready to forgive her, and I don't know if I ever will be. That's when things escalated. My dad sighed, crossing his arms. We're not saying you have to forgive her right away, but not inviting her to the wedding. Do you really want to make things worse? We're your parents, and we're telling you this is a mistake. I could feel my anger building. They weren't listening. It was like they cared more about keeping up appearances and having Sarah there than they did about how I felt. I don't care if it makes things worse, I snapped. This is about me and Alex, not Sarah. She lost the right to be part of my life when she did what she did. Then my mom hit me with the line that really set me off. If Sarah isn't invited, we might have to reconsider attending the wedding ourselves. I stared at them, completely speechless. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were basically giving me an ultimatum. Invite Sarah or they wouldn't come to my wedding. The worst part? They said it so calmly, like it was some reasonable request, like they were helping me by threatening to not come. You can't be serious, I said, my voice barely holding it together. You're really telling me that you won't come to your own daughter's wedding because I won't invite the sister who betrayed me? My dad didn't even blink. We're not saying we don't want to be there, but family is important. Sarah should be there, and we don't want to see our family divided like this. I couldn't believe it. This was my day, and here they were, making it all about Sarah. Not once did they ask how I felt about it. Not once did they consider that maybe, just maybe, I didn't want the person who hurt me most at my wedding. But it got worse. They didn't just stop at Sarah. Oh no, they decided to come for Emily too. And about Emily, my mom started, hesitating like she knew she was about to cross a line. We know she's been a good friend to you, but we also feel like she's complicated things between you and the family. I just stared at her. What are you talking about? My dad jumped in, clearly trying to back her up. We think maybe you should reconsider having Emily in the wedding party. She's been part of the reason you've distanced yourself from us, hasn't she? We're just worried she's been a negative influence. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were actually blaming Emily, my best friend, the one who had stood by me when my life fell apart, for complicating things. They thought she was the problem? So, let me get this straight, I said, my voice shaking. You want me to invite Sarah, the person who betrayed me, but uninvite Emily, the person who supported me through all of this? That's your solution? My mom had the nerve to look sad, like she was the one being hurt here. We just think it would help things go smoother. You and Sarah could try to rebuild, and Emily, well, she's not family. That was it. I was done. You know what? No. Emily is family. She's been more of a sister to me than Sarah ever has. If you're telling me I have to choose between inviting Sarah or having you at my wedding, then I guess you're not coming. They looked shocked, like they couldn't believe I was actually standing up to them. But I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to let them guilt-trip me into making my wedding day about Sarah. This is my wedding, I continued, my voice firm. And I'm not going to invite someone who hurt me just to make you happy. If you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't be there. My mom started to cry, and my dad just shook his head, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to bend this time. They could either support me or miss the wedding, but I wasn't going to let them control my life anymore. They left without saying much else. And after the door closed, I just stood there, feeling a weird mix of sadness and relief. It hurt, knowing they might not come. But at the same time, I felt free. Free to have the wedding I wanted, with the people who actually cared about me and supported me. And honestly, that's all I needed. After everything that happened with my parents, I wasn't sure what to expect. I sent out the invitations, hoping deep down that maybe they'd change their minds. I kept telling myself not to get my hopes up, but, they're my parents. Even after all the drama, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd come to their senses and show up for me on my wedding day. But as the days passed and the RSVP deadline came and went, I didn't hear a thing. No call, no message, nothing. I tried not to let it get to me, but it's hard not to feel something when your own parents are basically saying, yeah, we'd rather skip your wedding than support you. As the wedding day got closer, I pushed all that aside. I had too much to focus on. Last-minute details, the dress, the rehearsal, making sure everything was lined up for the big day. And honestly, the closer I got to the wedding, the more I realized I couldn't spend my time worrying about them. This was my day, and I was determined not to let their absence ruin it. The morning of the wedding was perfect. The weather was exactly what I hoped for. Sunny with a light breeze, just warm enough to feel comfortable without melting in the heat. Emily and the rest of my bridesmaids were there with me, getting ready in the bridal suite, and the energy was light, fun, and stress-free. We laughed, talked about everything except my parents, and just focused on what the day was supposed to be about. Celebrating my marriage to Alex. I won't lie, though. When it was time to start the ceremony, there was this little part of me that kept glancing toward the entrance, hoping, just for a second, that I'd see my parents walking in, late, but still there. But they didn't. That empty feeling came back, like a pit in my stomach, but I forced myself to push through it. I wasn't going to let their absence steal my happiness. The ceremony itself was amazing. Walking down the aisle without my dad was tough, but seeing Alex standing there, waiting for me with that goofy, loving smile on his face made everything else fade away. The vows, the laughter, the joy, it all felt so right, so us. I realized then that while I was a little sad about my parents, they weren't the ones who made this day special. Alex did. Our friends did. The people who actually cared about us and our happiness made it special. By the time the reception started, I wasn't even thinking about them anymore. The whole evening was filled with dancing, laughing, and just celebrating with the people who mattered. Emily gave the most heartfelt speech, making everyone tear up a little, and Alex's best man told some hilarious stories that had everyone rolling. The food was great, the music was perfect, and the dance floor was packed all night. Honestly, it couldn't have gone better. When Alex and I finally left, heading off for our honeymoon, I felt lighter than I had in months. There was no more stress, no more drama, just the two of us, starting this new chapter together. We went on this amazing trip, spending 2 weeks at a beach resort, just relaxing and enjoying the fact that we were married. It was the escape we both needed, a chance to leave everything behind and just focus on each other. But even during the honeymoon, I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, thinking maybe, my parents would reach out. Maybe they'd regret not coming. Maybe they'd want to make amends. But nothing. Not a single text. Not a call. Not even a generic congrats message. Radio silence. And honestly, by the time we got back, I was over it. Done. I had spent so much energy worrying about them, hoping they'd come around. But it was clear they weren't going to. I had given them every chance to be part of my life, to show up for me when it really mattered, and they chose not to. That's on them, not me. I'm not saying it didn't hurt because it did. But I was done letting their decisions control how I felt. I wasn't going to spend any more time chasing after people who didn't want to be there for me. I had Alex. I had my friends. I had the people who did show up, and that was enough. So, after the honeymoon, I just moved on. I didn't reach out to them, and they didn't reach out to me. And that was fine. I had a new life to focus on, and I wasn't going to let their absence cast a shadow over my happiness. The wedding was everything I hoped it would be, even without them. And as much as it hurt to realize they'd chosen not to be part of it, it also showed me something important. I don't need them to validate my life. I've got the people who truly care about me, and that's more than enough. So yeah, I was done with them. For the first time, I felt okay saying that. It wasn't angry or bitter. It was just the truth. They made their choice and I made mine. And at the end of the day, I was happy with how it all turned out. Because even without them, the day was still amazing, and that's all that really mattered. Story 5. My wife's friends ditched me 280 miles from home to teach me a lesson. They thought I'd beg to be rescued, but I ended up building a whole new life without them, and now they're furious. I'm happier than I've ever been. Hey, Reddit. Not sure where to even start with this one, but let's just say my wife's friends thought it'd be hilarious to pull a character-building prank on me during a cabin trip. What happened next ended up changing everything about my life, just not in the way they planned. All right, so I'll be honest right off the bat, I didn't even want to go on that stupid cabin trip. Every year, my wife and her friends did this bonding retreat thing, which really just meant 7 adults pretending they weren't miserable while drinking overpriced coffee and complaining about people not there. I dodged it for 3 years. Always said I had to work late at the shop or that my boss needed me over the weekend. It wasn't even a lie. My boss always needed something because he was a lazy prick who thought yelling counted as leadership. I, Simon, 35 male, am a mechanic. Been one since I was 18. Cars make sense to me. People don't. Especially my boss, Larry, 50 years old, thinks yelling your name across the garage every 10 minutes somehow makes him a hands-on manager. Guy couldn't change a tire without Googling it, but he walked around calling me kid like he was doing me a favor letting me breathe the same air. Every time I'd fix something complicated, he'd march up to the customer like he did it himself. Told my guys what to look for, he'd say. Yeah, right. The only thing Larry ever found was new ways to be useless. So yeah, between that and my wife, Hannah, nagging about how I never do anything social, I wasn't exactly living the dream. I worked too much, got paid too little, and somehow still ended up being the bad guy because I liked peace and quiet. This year, though, she wasn't taking no for an answer. She said, "Everyone wants you there this time, babe." I laughed. Yeah, sure. Everyone loved the quiet mechanic who made sarcastic comments every time someone tried to manifest positive energy. She gave me that face. You know the one women give when you've already lost the argument, but they let you think you still have a choice. So I went. We packed up her friend Maddie's SUV early Saturday morning. 6 people, 1 vehicle, and way too much perfume. The second we hit the highway, I knew I'd made a mistake. Her friends were the kind of people who call every mildly inconvenient thing traumatic. Hannah sat up front with Maddie, laughing way too hard at whatever podcast they had on, while the back seat was full of whispers and quiet giggles. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, someone was smirking, probably talking about how grumpy I looked. I tried zoning out, watching the trees blur past, but the whole ride felt off. They'd stop talking when I spoke up, then start again in low voices. Hannah flashed that polite PR face smile people use when they're lying through their teeth. My gut told me something was weird, but I brushed it off. I figured maybe they were planning some dumb surprise, like one of those group trust games where you fall backward and hope no one lets you hit the ground. We drove for hours. The farther we got, the less signal my phone had. Eventually, it just said, no service. The road turned to dirt, and then to what looked like a logging trail. I half joked, "You sure this is the right way and not where horror movies start?" Nobody laughed. They just exchanged glances. Finally, we pulled up to the cabin. Big wooden place sitting on a patch of dirt surrounded by endless trees. Maddie said she'd booked it from some local guy who rents it out every summer. Apparently, it belonged to an older man in town who lets people use it for off-grid weekends. No other houses in sight. Just silence and the sound of the SUV's engine cooling off. The air smelled like pine and old rain. Cute, right? Maddie said, hopping out. Yeah, I said. If you like places where murders go unsolved. Ferda. They laughed politely, but nobody denied it. I hauled our bags out while the rest of them acted like they were setting up camp for a reality show. Hannah ran around pointing out rustic charm, creaky floors, dusty curtains, and a fireplace that looked like it hadn't worked since the 80s. At dinner, they kept sharing inside jokes I didn't get. Every time I asked what was funny, someone said, "Oh, nothing," in that way that obviously means, "It's about you." Hannah was overly sweet the whole night, acting like I was some fragile guest who might break if she didn't hold my hand every 5 minutes. When I offered to help clean up, Maddie waved me off. "You've done enough today, hero," she said with a grin. I remember thinking, what the hell does that even mean? Hannah came to me wearing that fake smile again. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just soaking in all this fresh air and awkward tension," I said. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. "Try to have fun, please." "For me?" "Sure," I said, even though we both knew I didn't mean it. When we went to bed, I couldn't shake the weird feeling. The laughter, the looks, the overpacked supplies, everything felt staged. I told myself I was just tired, maybe being paranoid. But deep down, something in my gut whispered this trip was going to go sideways. And man, I should have listened. The next morning, I woke up late, and my first thought was that everyone had already gotten up and started breakfast. The cabin was too quiet, but I figured maybe they'd gone outside to take those fake morning nature selfies people love posting with captions like, "Disconnect to reconnect." I rolled out of bed, pulled on my jeans, and walked into the main room. Empty. Not just quiet, empty. The chatter, the giggles, the fake cheer, it was all gone. Every bag, jacket, and piece of luggage that wasn't mine had disappeared. At first, I thought maybe they'd gone for a hike. I checked the kitchen also, nothing but something stuck to the table. A bright yellow sticky note, right in the middle. It said, "Build some character." I just stood there for a second, staring at it. My brain needed a minute to process. That was it. No explanation, no joke, no back in 10. Just those 3 words and a stupid smiley face. I stepped to the window, and that's when I heard it. Laughing. Loud, obnoxious, echoing across the trees. I looked out just in time to see the SUV bouncing down the dirt path. Hannah's blonde hair was sticking out the passenger window. Maddie was in the driver's seat. Someone in the back had their phone up, recording. They were laughing so hard they were practically crying. For a second, I couldn't move. It felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's nightmare. Then the shock turned into something else. Heat. Anger. I shoved the door open and ran onto the porch. "Are you kidding me?" I shouted. The SUV didn't stop. The laughter got louder, fading as the vehicle turned the corner and disappeared into the woods. Dust kicked up behind them, floating in the air like smoke. I stood there in the middle of nowhere, barefoot, the note crumpled in my hand. I swear I could still hear them laughing long after they were gone. At first, I wanted to grab my phone, call someone, anyone. But when I looked at the signal bar, it said exactly what I expected. No service. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some quick prank. They planned this. The whispering in the car, the extra luggage, the fake smiles, the way Hannah kept checking if I brought enough stuff. It all made sense now. I looked back inside the cabin. There was food in the fridge. Some canned soup, eggs, basic stuff. They hadn't left me with nothing, but it was still clear they wanted to watch me panic. It wasn't funny. It wasn't some team bonding exercise. It was humiliation. For a minute, I honestly considered trying to walk back. But where would I even go? The nearest gas station was probably 20 miles away. I didn't know the area, and I wasn't about to wander through the woods like some lost hiker just to prove a point. I was 280 miles away from home, so I sat down on the porch and thought. The anger was fading, replaced by something weirdly calm, like my brain was rebooting and realizing this was the first time in years that I didn't have to do anything. Nobody was yelling at me to fix something. Nobody was asking for favors. No phone buzzing every 5 minutes. It was just quiet. I stood up, stretched, and looked around. Trees as far as the eye could see. "All right," I muttered. "Let's see what kind of character you want me to build." I started going through the cabin. The place had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a main room with a fireplace, and a small kitchen. The pantry had enough canned food to last a week or 2 if I rationed. There was an old tool set, a few flashlights, and a big box of matches. I checked the back porch next. A stack of chopped wood, a rusted shovel, and a few empty propane tanks. Whoever owned this place before definitely knew how to live out here. I wasn't going to give them the reaction they wanted. They probably thought I'd freak out, call for help, cry, whatever. Nah, they'd underestimated me. If anything, they'd handed me the one thing I'd been craving for years. A break. No boss breathing down my neck. No wife giving me attitude because I didn't open up emotionally after 10 hours at the shop. Just me and the sound of wind. I cleaned up the kitchen a little, made some coffee with the old percolator I found, and sat by the window. For the first time in years, I drank it while it was still hot. Later, I walked around the property. Behind the cabin was a small shed, half buried under vines. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. The padlock was rusted, but I figured I'd deal with that later. The shed could wait. The day went slow, but in a good way. I found a few fishing poles in the corner of the porch, and I made a mental note to check out that creek tomorrow. The sky was turning orange by the time I went back inside. They thought this would break me. What they didn't realize was that I was already broken long before this trip. The job, the noise, the fake smiles, all of it. But this was different. This wasn't punishment. It was a reset button. By the time the sun went down, I had a fire going, a warm meal, and no one telling me what to do. I sat back on the old couch, listening to the crackle of the wood. Guess I'll build some character then, I said to the empty room. For once, it wasn't just a line, I believed it. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. No yelling, no engines revving, no boss hollering my name across the garage. Just wind outside and the soft ticking of the old clock. Nothing demanding my attention for once. For a minute, I didn't even move. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, realizing that no one in the world expected anything from me right now. After breakfast, I decided to poke around the cabin a little more. I found a stack of dusty journals, real old-school leather-bound yellowed paper. Curiosity got me, so I sat down and started flipping through. Most of the entries were dated decades back. A family used to come up here every summer. Handwritten notes about fishing spots, local trails. Some entries even mentioned a nearby town about 15 miles south. That might have been useful later, but for now, I wasn't going anywhere. One of the last journals was from a guy in the early 2000s. He wrote about catching trout in the stream, said the water was clean enough to drink if you boiled it first. He even sketched a rough map of the area. The guy clearly loved the place. I could see why. By afternoon, I'd organized what supplies I had, made a small checklist, and even fixed the door hinge that had been squeaking. Working with my hands again, without someone barking orders, felt good. When the sun started dipping behind the trees, I grabbed an old chair and sat on the porch. The air was cooler now. Then I saw it. A small flicker of light between the trees. Not firelight, too white and sharp. A flashlight beam, moving slowly, like someone walking. At first, my heart jumped a little. I figured maybe Hannah or one of her friends had come back early, realizing how messed up their little joke was. But as the light got closer, I saw a single figure. Not a group. He was tall, maybe in his 60s, wearing a flannel jacket and a hat. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a wrench I'd been using earlier, and stood on the porch, waiting. The guy stopped a few yards away, raising his free hand. "Evenin', son," he said, voice calm, deep, and friendly. "Didn't mean to startle you." I lowered the wrench but didn't relax completely. "You're a long way from town." He smiled. "Could say the same for you." He stepped into the light from the porch. Older guy, gray beard, weathered face, eyes that looked like he'd seen everything twice and didn't care much for either time. "Name's Earl," he said. "I live a few miles that way." He nodded back through the trees. "Saw smoke from your chimney yesterday? Figured I'd come check if someone moved into the cabin again." I leaned against the railing. "Moved in's one way to put it." We talked for a while, and I told him what happened. The trip, the build character note, the car driving off, the laughter. Earl just listened, occasionally shaking his head, like he'd heard worse but still couldn't believe it. When I finished, he chuckled, though not meanly. "You married into the wrong crowd, son." "Tell me about it," I said. "They called it a joke. I call it free time." He laughed harder this time. "That's one way to spin it. You doing all right out here?" "Yeah. Got food, got water, got quiet. That last one's my favorite." Earl nodded. "That's the thing about quiet. It tells you who you really are." He reached into the old canvas bag slung over his shoulder and pulled out a few items. A couple of canned goods, a flashlight, and a pack of batteries. "Here. Figured you might be short on some basics." I raised an eyebrow. "You always bring gifts for strangers?" He grinned. "Only for the ones who look like they could use them. I got plenty. You'll pay me back by not dying out here." I laughed. "Deal." He pointed toward the back of the cabin. "There's an old shed back there. Belonged to the original owners. Might be some tools or something you can use. Roof's half caved in, so watch your step. Appreciate the tip." He gave a small nod, turned his flashlight on again, and started walking back into the trees. The next morning, I followed Earl's directions to the shed. It was half hidden behind thick vines and weeds. The door was hanging off one hinge, and a rusty padlock dangled uselessly from it. I gave it one pull, and the whole thing came off. Inside, it smelled like dust and old oil. My eyes landed on something big covered in a tarp. I tugged the tarp back, and my heart skipped a beat. A Ford Mustang. Mid-70s. Maybe a 73. Covered in dust and rust, but still beautiful. The kind of car that begged to be brought back to life. Keys were hanging on a nail beside the door, like someone had planned to come back for it. I stood there staring for a while, and for the first time since they left me here, I grinned. Like a real grin, not the fake kind you do for peacekeeping. "Well," I said out loud, "guess I found my next project." The silence didn't answer, but it didn't need to. It already felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. I grabbed the flashlight Earl had given me and headed straight for that shed again. Seeing that Mustang sitting there under the tarp had kept me awake half the night. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The lines, the rust, the potential. When I pulled the tarp off again, I stood there like a kid looking at a Christmas present he wasn't supposed to touch. It was a mess, sure. Dust thick enough to write your name in, tires flat, one headlight cracked, and a family of spiders that looked like they'd been paying rent. But under all that, it was still a Mustang. I ran my hand along the hood, leaving a streak through the dirt. You and me, I said quietly. We're both overdue for a rebuild. I popped the hood and took a look. The engine was greasy, half seized, but not dead. The tank smelled like varnish, so I drained the old gas, swapped the filter, and poured in some fresh fuel I found in a dusty jerry can tucked behind the workbench. Whoever left this here actually took decent care of it for a while. The battery was toast, and the spark plugs were ancient, but the belts weren't snapped, and there was still oil in the pan. Barely, but still. For the first time since being left here, I felt that familiar excitement again, the kind that hits you when you know something broken can still be fixed. I dug around the shed and found an old toolbox, dusty but solid. Some of the wrenches were rusted stiff, but I cleaned them up as best I could. There was even a small air compressor tucked in the corner. I hauled it all outside, set up a makeshift workbench on the porch, and got to work. By mid-afternoon, I had grease up to my elbows and a grin that hadn't shown up in years. There was still grid power running to the cabin, barely, but enough to keep a light bulb and that ancient charger alive. I found an old battery charger in the shed, hooked it up, and left it overnight. The next morning, I bolted the battery in, double-checked everything, and turned the key. Nothing. Not even a cough. I wasn't surprised. Old engines are like old men. They don't wake up easy after years of sleeping. I popped the hood again, tinkered with the carburetor, cleaned the plugs, tapped the starter a few times. Then I tried again. This time the engine coughed, sputtered, and belched out a cloud of gray smoke that smelled like pure nostalgia. I laughed out loud. That's it, baby. Come on. Show me what you got. A few more turns of the key, and the Mustang roared. Rough, loud, shaky, but alive. I swear I could have hugged it. The echo of that engine filled the woods, bouncing off the trees. For a minute, I just stood there, soaking it in. That sound, that was freedom. That was mine. After letting it idle for a bit, I bled the front brakes, aired the tires up with that little compressor, and kept it under 20 on the back roads. The tires were half flat. The brakes squealed like hell. But it moved. Over the next few days, I fixed it up more. Replaced what I could with parts scavenged from random junk piles around the shed. Cleaned the interior, patched the seats, and even managed to polish the windshield enough to see through. The deeper I got into it, the more I realized how much time I'd wasted in that shop under someone else's rules. I'd been building someone else's dream while mine rusted out. When I was finally satisfied that the car wouldn't fall apart under me, I filled a couple of jugs from the creek for water, packed some canned food, and decided to drive to the town I'd read about in those old journals. When I finally trusted the old girl enough to move, I tossed a spare belt in the trunk and packed a jug of creek water, just in case she coughed halfway there. 15 miles later, I hit pavement. Cracked, faded, but still smoother than I expected. Then came the signs of life. An old gas station, a general store, a diner with a flickering open sign. The town looked like something out of a postcard that hadn't been updated since 1985. A few people stood outside the diner talking, one guy sweeping the front steps. When they saw the Mustang roll up, every head turned. I parked out front and got out. My clothes were still stained with grease, but I didn't care. As soon as I hit Main Street, my phone buzzed like it had been waiting for miles. 3 bars suddenly popped up out of nowhere. A woman in her 50s with graying hair came out, wiping her hands on an apron. You drive that thing all the way up here? She asked. Just from the woods, I said. Brought it back from the dead. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee, bacon, and something fried. I ordered the cheapest breakfast plate on the menu and inhaled it. The waitress kept looking at me like she wanted to ask something. So I finally said, "Go ahead." "You new around here?" she asked. "Sort of. Got left up at the cabin a few miles north." Her eyebrows lifted. "Left?" "Yeah," I said. "Long story involving bad humor and worse friends." She laughed. "Well, you're not the first city guy to get ditched out here. You staying?" "Maybe. Thinking about it." By the time I finished my coffee, the owner came out from the kitchen, a broad man with a beard that looked like it could filter gravel. "You said you fix cars?" he asked. "Yeah. Been a mechanic since before YouTube told people how to do it wrong." He laughed. "You free tomorrow morning? Got an old truck out back that's been giving me trouble. Can't afford a shop right now." Sure, I said. I'll take a look. He nodded. I'll pay cash and feed you breakfast. Deal? Best offer I've had in years. When I walked out, the sun was high, the Mustang gleaming under it like it knew it still had a purpose. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel stuck or angry. I wasn't waiting for permission or pretending to be grateful. I was working on my own terms, driving my own path. And damn, it felt good. The next morning, I showed up at the diner before sunrise. The owner, guy named Rick, was already outside, wiping his hands on a rag and staring at an old blue Chevy pickup parked behind the building. Morning, I said, stretching. He grunted. Morning. You weren't kidding about showing up early. I'm a mechanic, I said. We're born tired. The truck wasn't in great shape. After 20 minutes, I found the problem. Cracked fuel line and a bad gasket. I told him I could fix it if he didn't mind a few creative adjustments. Creative sounds cheaper than new parts, he said. An hour later, the truck started up smoother than it probably had in years. Rick stared at it like I'd just performed some kind of miracle. You're hired, he said immediately. I'll pay cash if you help me out a few days a week. I can't find anyone around here who knows what they're doing anymore. I shrugged. I'm not going anywhere for a while, so yeah. Deal. He paid me right there, plus breakfast. Word spread faster than oil on concrete. By the third day, a guy from the gas station came by asking if I could take a look at his Jeep. Then another guy from the general store said his cousin's van wouldn't start. Before I knew it, I had a steady line of people asking for help. They started calling me the city mechanic who got left behind. Not in a mean way. It was almost a badge of honor. I'd show up in my greasy jeans, fix their problems, and end up having lunch or coffee with them afterward. One guy, Tom, ran the local hardware store. He offered me a small shed behind his shop to use as a workspace. I cleaned it out, set up my tools, and by the end of the week, it looked like a mini garage. My hands were cracked, my clothes were ruined, but I hadn't smiled this much in years. There was something about fixing things here that felt different. Back in the city, repairs were just transactions. Get it done, get paid, move to the next headache. Here, people shook your hand after. They looked you in the eye and said, thank you, like they actually meant it. I didn't realize how starved I'd been for that kind of basic respect. A few days later, I finally checked my phone. It had been off since I'd left the cabin to find the town. When I turned it on, it lit up like a Christmas tree. 47 unread messages, 13 missed calls, and a handful of voicemails. The first few were from Hannah. Okay, haha, very funny. You proved your point. Come back now. You're really milking this, huh? Fine, stay a few days. Maybe it'll help you calm down. Can you at least text me so people stop asking where you are? Then they got worse. You're making me look bad. Everyone's asking questions. This is getting embarrassing. Stop acting like a child. If you wanted attention, you could have just said so. I scrolled through all of it and laughed quietly. She had no idea. To her, this was still some game. She couldn't imagine that maybe I didn't want to go back. I put the phone down, wiped my hands on a rag, and went back to work on an old carburetor that had been giving me trouble. The smell of oil and metal beat the smell of overpriced perfume any day. After a week, I realized something crazy. I hadn't thought about home once. Not my job, not Hannah, not the noise. Just peace. Real peace. A few nights later, I checked my phone again. More messages. This isn't funny anymore. You're embarrassing both of us. You're acting like a psycho, just come home. Then a final one. If you stay there, don't bother coming back. We're done. I stared at it for a long time and laughed. Did she really think that I'd be back with her after this circus? I put the phone down. Somewhere out there, my old life was waiting. My boss, my wife, the endless cycle of pretending to be okay. But here, things made sense. People needed help, I had skills, and that was enough. I went back inside the shed, wiped off the carburetor, and put it back in place. The engine turned over on the first try. Smooth. Strong. I grinned and said to myself, guess I'm not the one who needed fixing. And for the first time in my entire life, I meant that too. A few weeks passed like that. I started paying rent for the cabin. The owner, some old guy in town, said he'd been trying to rent it for years, but nobody wanted it because it was too old and too far out. Worked fine for me. Cheap, quiet, and all mine for the time being. Then one afternoon, I pulled up to the cabin after work, and there they were, Hannah and her friends. An SUV parked crooked in the dirt, like they'd shown up in a hurry. I cut the engine and just sat there for a second, watching them standing near the porch. They were all dressed like they were filming an ad for expensive hiking gear, sunglasses, fake smiles, the whole "we didn't do anything wrong" vibe. Hannah was at the front, hands on her hips, shifting her weight like she was about to lecture me. Maddie stood beside her with that smug grin she always had, and the others hung back pretending to look concerned. I got out of the car slowly, wiping my hands on a rag, still in my work shirt with my name stitched on the pocket. Wow, I said. You guys took a wrong turn or just remembered I exist? Hannah sighed like she'd been waiting for that line. We didn't think you'd actually stay here, she said. You made your point, okay? It was a joke that went too far. Too far, I repeated. You mean the part where you abandoned me miles from home? Or the part where you filmed it like a prank video? Maddie rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. We left you food and you clearly survived. You should be laughing about it now. Yeah, I said. I laughed, just not the way you wanted. Hannah stepped closer, forcing a sweet tone that didn't match her face. Look, can we not do this here? You're really embarrassing me. People have been asking where you are. Tell them I'm working, I said, walking past her toward the porch. Honest living, you know. It's that thing people do when they're not busy pulling stunts for attention. Her jaw tightened. You think you're better than us now? I turned around. No, I just think I'm done pretending I'm not. That landed harder than I expected. Maddie crossed her arms, muttering, Unbelievable. One of the other friends tried to play peacemaker. Okay, this doesn't have to get ugly. We came here because we care, and we wanted to make things right. Right, I said, leaning on the porch railing. You cared so much you vanished before breakfast. That's real friendship right there. Hannah's fake sweetness cracked. You're seriously overreacting. We were joking. Everyone thought it'd be funny. She continued, You're making this harder than it needs to be. Just come home. I smiled a little. I am home. Hannah's voice went sharp. Don't start with that. You don't belong here. You have a job. A house. Had a job. I cut in. And the house? You can start paying the rent by yourself. I'm not going back. Stop being childish, she snapped. This whole thing was supposed to teach you something. I laughed, low and steady. Yeah, it did. You told me to build character. I did. They went silent. Even Maddie didn't have a comeback for that. I stepped down off the porch and walked toward my car. You know, it's funny, I said. You all thought I'd beg to come home, that I'd panic or fall apart. But you did me a favor. I got rid of all the noise. And without that noise, I finally saw what mattered. And what's that? Hannah asked. Me, I said simply. My life. My peace. The part of me you kept trying to fix when nothing was broken except your expectations. Her lips trembled, and for a second, I saw her mask slip. The tone changed fast after that. The performance dropped. Whatever act she'd been rehearsing fell apart in a second. Hannah's voice shook as she tried to guilt me again. You're ruining everything we built together. What did we build, Hannah? I asked. A marriage where you treat me like a prop in front of your friends? A life where I hate waking up every morning? You didn't build anything. You maintained a routine. She started crying then, or maybe pretending to. I couldn't tell anymore. I just wanted you to be stronger, she said. I nodded slowly. You got your wish. I'm stronger now. Just not for you. For a long moment, nobody said a word. Just the wind moving through the trees and a loose board on the porch creaking under my boot. Finally, Maddie huffed. You're unbelievable. We drove all the way up here for nothing. Pretty much, I said. But hey, thanks for stopping by. I was starting to wonder if I'd have to send you a thank you card. Hannah looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Maybe she didn't. Maybe this was the first time she was seeing the version of me that didn't fold, didn't apologize, didn't chase her approval. When they realized I wasn't budging, they gave up. Hannah turned away first, muttering something under her breath. The others followed, stomping back to their SUV. Doors slammed, engines started, and just like that, they were gone again. The same dirt road, same sound of tires fading into the trees. I looked down at my hands, still stained with grease, and couldn't help but laugh to myself. Build some character, I said out loud. Yeah, nailed it. And then I walked back into my cabin, brewed myself some coffee, and sat by the window. The silence felt different this time. Not just peaceful, but earned. They wanted me to prove myself, and I did. Just not in the way they ever expected. 6 months later, everything in my life looked different. The cabin wasn't just some survival spot anymore. It was home. I ended up buying it from the owner, a retired logger who was shocked anyone even wanted the place. He practically begged me to take it off his hands for cheap, saying, Son, if you can stand the quiet, it's yours. I signed the papers that same week. When I mentioned the old Mustang in the shed, he laughed and said, That hunk of metal? If you really got it running, it's yours. Title's probably still in the glove box somewhere. My work in town had picked up big time too. Rick from the diner introduced me to a guy named Dale, a quiet older mechanic who'd been running a one-man garage for years but was ready to slow down. We hit it off instantly. Same humor, same work ethic, same mutual hatred for clueless customers who thought duct tape could fix anything. After a few weeks of helping him out, he offered to split the rent and let me co-run the shop. We called it Iron Ridge Auto, mostly because the town was near Iron Ridge Trail, and partly because it sounded like something that belonged on a sign. We didn't do advertising. Word of mouth did all the work. Soon we had people coming from 3 towns over just to get repairs. They liked that we didn't talk down to them or overcharge them like the city shops did. By the end of the first month, we were booked solid. That was more respect than I ever got back home. Speaking of home, word got around eventually. Hannah's version of events made its way back to me through a mutual friend online. Apparently, she was telling people I'd had a breakdown and ran away from everything. She said I couldn't handle the pressure of marriage or work, and that she'd tried to help me, but I'd lost my mind. I almost laughed when I heard that. If living in peace, owning property, and running a business counted as a breakdown, then yeah, I was totally broken. I didn't bother correcting her. Let her have her story. People like her need to be the victim in every version of life they tell. As the months passed, I started to really fit in around here. When the 1-year anniversary of being abandoned rolled around, I decided to do something small to mark it. Not a pity party, more like a thank you to the people who had unknowingly helped me rebuild my life. I set up a grill outside the cabin and invited everyone who'd been part of my new start. Rick, Dale, a few of the diner regulars, the store owner, and even Earl, the old man who'd first found me and given me those supplies. They all showed up, bringing food, tools, stories, and laughter. Halfway through the night, while I was flipping burgers, my phone buzzed on the porch table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. I heard you bought that place up there. I hope you're happy. No name, but I didn't need one. I stared at it for a second, then looked around me. Real people laughing, kids chasing each other, music playing, stars starting to break through the sky. I typed 2 words back, I am. Then I deleted the number for good. I thought about everything that led me here. The crappy job, the fake friends, the build character prank that was supposed to humiliate me. Funny thing is, it worked. It built character all right, just not the way they planned. They tried to make me the joke, and I turned it into a fresh start. They left me behind, and I built a life they couldn't touch. And sitting there on that porch, with the Mustang parked nearby and the quiet hum of crickets filling the air, I realized something simple. They'd freed me. The biggest favor they ever did was walking away laughing, thinking they'd won. Because that's when I finally stopped living for anyone else. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 6. This story is titled, Wife Let Her Friends Disrespect Me. You Deserve Better, and He Is Out of Your League. They smirked and she went along. So I left. But now she's watching me build a new life without her, and she is desperate for a second chance. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. But I already moved on. I, 37 male, fought for my self-respect and divorced my wife of 6 years, Emma, 34 male, because she let her friends disrespect me. They made fun of me and she watched. The worst part? She enjoyed it. Everyone around me has been on my back, calling me crazy and impulsive for taking it so far for a silly reason. Maybe it's silly for them, but my self-respect is a big fucking deal for me. Let me give you guys some background. I grew up with 3 older brothers in a household where respect was everything. My dad was a retired army sergeant who taught us that a man's word and his honor were all he truly had in this world. When I was 10, I remember my dad pulling me aside after some kid at school had pushed me around. He didn't tell me to fight back. He told me something I never forgot. Jack, you teach people how to treat you. If you let them step on you once, they'll do it forever. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I worked my ass off to get where I am, putting myself through college while working nights as a bouncer at this sketchy bar downtown. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches with a naturally broad build, thanks to my old man's genes, I was perfect for the job. Dealing with drunk assholes trying to start fights every weekend taught me a lot about setting boundaries with people. After graduating, I landed an entry-level position at a financial advising firm, then grinded for 12 years to make senior advisor. I built my client portfolio through pure hustle, cold calls, networking events, staying late when everyone else went home. Nothing was handed to me. I built everything I have through sweat and determination. My brothers all went into different fields. One's a cop, another's in the military like dad, and the oldest runs his own construction business. We're all cut from the same cloth, though. Straightforward guys who don't take shit from anyone. That's why what happened with Emma hit me so hard. It went against everything I was raised to believe about how a man should be treated, especially by his wife. I met Emma at a mutual friend's wedding. She was gorgeous. This stunning brunette with bright green eyes that could stop traffic. Way out of my league looks-wise, but we connected immediately. She was smart, worked as a marketing executive for a cosmetics company, and seemed to appreciate my straightforward nature. When other guys were playing games and putting on fake personas to impress her, I just told her exactly who I was. 6 months later, I proposed. The first year of marriage was fucking perfect. We bought a modest but nice house in a good neighborhood, traveled to Mexico and the Bahamas, and talked about starting a family in the near future. Then I met her college friends. She had this very close group of girlfriends from college. From the start, I had a feeling they didn't like me, but I shrugged it off. Who cares what my wife's friends think? They weren't important to me. But right from the first time she introduced me to them at this fancy brunch spot downtown, I felt this cold vibe. They tried to be sweet, but one could easily see through their act. The awkward silence and side glances said a lot. "So, Jack, what is it that you do again?" one of them asked with this fake smile. "I'm a financial advisor," I replied. "Oh, interesting," she said, in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. "Like, you help people with their 401ks and stuff?" She giggled, like it was the most boring job in the world. "Among other things," I said, trying to keep it civil. "I help high net worth individuals manage their investment portfolios and develop long-term wealth strategies." Sounds technical, another one chimed in, before immediately turning to Emma. "Remember that guy Alicia dated last year? The one who managed that hedge fund? What was his name again?" And just like that, I was excluded from the conversation. Emma didn't even notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. Initially, I brushed it off thinking I was overthinking. Or maybe they needed time to get along. But it was those subtle hints that said out loud that I was unwanted. They'd cut me off in conversations and move the talks to the other direction of what I said. If I cracked a joke, they exchanged glances and smirked. They'd make inside jokes at my expense. Jokes Emma never bothered to explain. Once, one of them outright asked Emma right in front of me, "How did you end up with him?" Emma just laughed and said, "Oh, he grows on you." Like I was some kind of fungus. I asked what that was supposed to mean, and they changed the topic. I felt like a fucking outsider in my own relationship. The worst part? She never stood up for me, not once. Later, when I confronted Emma in the car ride home, she brushed it off as a joke. "Babe, you're being way too sensitive," she said, rolling her eyes. "That's just how they are. They tease everyone." "Did you see how they treated me?" I asked. "They acted like I wasn't even there." "You're exaggerating. They were just being silly. Don't take it so personally." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on. Eventually, I stopped tagging along when she went out with them. I'd make up excuses about work or needing to hit the gym, but sometimes they would show up at our place for wine nights, or before they all went out clubbing, and I couldn't avoid them. Though I didn't talk to them except for pleasantries, their presence fucked with my mind. There were so many times when I asked Emma why her friends were so cold towards me. Usually, she would brush it off, but once after a few too many glasses of wine, she confessed that her friends thought she deserved better, that I was not successful enough, and maybe she was settling with me. Also, I didn't have the right connections, she said. My friends look up to me as a smart and confident woman, and they had expected I would marry some CEO or executive. I remember sitting there, stunned, as she kept talking like what she was saying wasn't driving a knife into my chest. Vanessa especially thinks I could have done better. Her husband makes 7 figures, and they just bought that house in the Hamptons and she trailed off, finally noticing my expression. Her words made me ask why she even married me, or if she thought so too. She backpedaled hard, eyes wide, suddenly realizing what she'd admitted. No, that's not what I think. I'm just telling you what they said. I married you because I love you. I don't care about all that superficial stuff." She assured me that she married for love, and she was happy and content. I wanted to believe her, but the seed of doubt was planted. Still, that was the only worrisome part of our marriage. If you remove her friends from the equation, we had an amazing life. I'd come home from work, hit the home gym I built in our garage. Staying fit has always been important to me, and then we'd spend quality time together. Weekends were for hiking or trying new restaurants. We didn't have any major fights apart from the ones that popped up due to her friends. It feels like she becomes a different person in front of them. Usually she's kind and considerate, but with them she becomes feisty and savage. All her friends are this way. Maybe she tries to fit in. I tried to understand that. Everyone wants to belong, but at what cost? Anyways, the breaking point was their group chat. Around 5 months back, her laptop crashed, and she used mine for a while. She logged into WhatsApp on my computer but forgot to log out. A few days later, I opened the app and realized it was her account. I was about to close it when messages started syncing. Hundreds of them. And you know, there's no way you could stop the sync. I intended to log out, but my name popped up multiple times in a group chat sync, and I could see through the preview. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the chat. What I saw, man, I can still feel that pit in my stomach thinking about it. It was worse than I ever imagined. She wasn't just tolerating their trash talk, she was enjoying it. The group was called Boss Babes. There were 5 of them, including Emma. They talked daily, sharing everything from work gossip to relationship details. I scrolled back a bit to get context, and what I found made me sick. There's one friend named Vanessa. She's the meanest of all. She married a hedge fund manager a year back and brags nonstop about the money, the holidays, and gifts. The guy is handsome too, former college athlete type who still has time to hit the gym despite his supposedly demanding job. She often sent their pictures in the group and then tagged Emma and asked, "What did Jack do for your birthday?" Or, "Where was Jack taking you for the holidays?" It was hurtful, but Emma's response was more shattering. I kept reading, unable to stop despite the growing knot in my throat. Vanessa. Just got back from Maui. Kevin surprised me for our anniversary. Photo of her in a bikini next to her husband on a yacht. Emma. OMG, so jealous. Looks amazing. Vanessa. What did Jack get you for your birthday last month? Did he finally take you to that restaurant you've been hinting about? Emma. Lol, no. He got me flowers and cooked dinner. It was sweet, I guess. Vanessa. Flowers and dinner at home? That's it? Girl. Then another friend chimed in. Stephanie. I swear, sometimes I wonder, what were you even thinking when you decided to marry him? And Emma responded, I wonder that too, lol. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This was my wife, the woman who just last night had curled up next to me on the couch, who told me she loved me before we went to sleep. The conversation continued. Ashley. He's so boring, he doesn't even surprise you with weekend getaways like Kevin does for Vanessa. To which Emma replied, Huh? Vanessa. You deserve someone who matches your energy, Em. Someone successful and exciting. Not Mr. Financial Planner who thinks a wild night is trying a new IPA at the local brewery, LMAO. Emma. Stop. They egged on, laughing at my expense like I was some clueless fool. The worst part was seeing how easily Emma joined in. In some messages, she'd defend me a little. He's really good with money though, or he's sweet in his own way. But it felt like she was talking about a pet, not her husband. One of them even suggested she find someone on the side, someone more exciting. Emma's response was, You bet, followed by a winky face. I felt sick to my guts. I was shaking. This wasn't just mean-spirited gossip. It was hurtful. I exported the whole chat into my mailbox and saved it on my laptop. I've never been the type of guy to let people walk all over me. In the gym, at work, anywhere, I stand my ground. But here I was, letting my own wife and her friends treat me like I was nothing. Not anymore. I kept digging, looking for any evidence that she might have actually cheated. Nothing concrete turned up, but there were several instances where they discussed attractive men at her workplace or friends of friends. Enough to keep the paranoia simmering. Was she just talking? Or had there been more? I didn't explode. I just sat there processing. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, had been making a joke out of me for years. And I was a fool to think we had a great marriage. I scanned through her inbox but didn't find anything else. Her chat with her mom also had nothing in it. In fact, to her mom, she painted our marriage as perfect. I wondered which version was the lie. When she got home that evening, I was sitting in the living room, my laptop open on the coffee table. She came in smiling, dropped her purse on the counter, and leaned in to kiss me like any normal day. I turned my face away. What's wrong? She asked, immediately sensing the tension. I gestured to the laptop. You forgot to log out of WhatsApp on my computer. She froze and then panicked, her face draining of color as realization dawned. Jack, how much did you read? Enough, I said quietly. Enough to know what you and your friends really think of me. She tried to gaslight me that I invaded her privacy and went through her messages. She accused me as if that was the real issue, as if the violation of her privacy was the crime here, not the absolute mockery of our marriage. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. You're worried about your privacy? What about my dignity? What about our marriage? Do you think it's normal to talk about your husband that way? It's just girl talk, she insisted, tears forming in her eyes. Everyone vents about their partners sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. I literally told her, you didn't log out, and frankly, I'm glad you didn't. At least now I know the truth. What you think about me. She defended herself, saying she didn't say anything wrong about me. She challenged me to show her proof that she talked badly about me. Yes, you didn't say outright, but you didn't stop them either. You laughed along. You agreed with them. Tell me, Emma, if someone was talking shit about your husband, shouldn't your first reaction be to defend him? Not join in? This situation blew up. I was really mad at her. She too was defending herself, that her friends were just funny and messing up with her. And they say mean things about everyone, and I was no exception. So that makes it okay? I asked incredulously. Everyone gets shit on, so I should just accept it? Is that really your defense here? I said, I don't care what they say or do. You being my wife should have defended me. But you enjoyed their insults on me. You participated. She tried to defend herself and her friends, but I laid it out plain and simple. It's them or me. Either she cut them off right now over the phone in front of me, or we were done. You can't be serious, she said, eyes wide. They're my best friends. I've known them for over a decade. And I'm your husband, the man you promised to love and respect. Choose. She hesitated. She actually hesitated. She pushed back. Come on. You know, they're just joking. And you're taking this too seriously. We can work this out. I'll talk to them, tell them to tone it down. I said, that's not good enough. I want them out of our lives. They're toxic, and they're poisoning our marriage. That's not fair. You can't just demand I cut off my friends. What kind of controlling bullshit is that? It's not controlling to expect my wife not to participate in humiliating me behind my back. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I will and won't tolerate in my marriage. The choice is yours. She stared at me for a long moment, then said, I can't cut them off. That's not reasonable. I said, cool. You made your choice. And now I would make mine. I'm ending it. She freaked out. You're really going to break up over some texts? Over these stupid reasons? You're throwing away 6 years of marriage over this? It's not about texts or petty reasons. It's about self-respect. As my wife, it's your duty to protect my honor. And you had failed to do so. I was still being considerate and giving her a chance to make things right. All she had to do was cut off her friends. What's the use of such cruel people in life who only put you down and make you feel small? She didn't understand it. Over the next few days, the arguments continued. She oscillated between defensive anger and tearful apologies. She promised to be better, to stand up for me more, to limit her time with them. But she wouldn't take the step I needed, cutting them out completely. She apologized on their behalf and promised to keep them in check next time. I said, it's not helping. I don't need a sorry. I want you to cut them off right now. If you can't, then I'm out. They're not that bad, she insisted. You're only seeing the worst moments. They can be really supportive too. Supportive of what? Undermining your marriage? Making you feel like you settled? Encouraging you to cheat? That was just a joke. I would never cheat on you. But you joke about it with them. You entertain the idea. Where's the respect in that? After a lot of back and forth and multiple rounds of fighting and yelling, she finally said firmly that she cannot cut off her friends. They came into my life before you and I can't lose them over you. Those words told me everything I needed to know about where I ranked in her priorities. I grabbed my jacket and said, cool. Then I can't live with you. End of discussion. She tried to stop me, but I stormed out. I spent the night at a hotel, just needing space to think. Over the next few days, I told her we needed to start living separately. Either she moved out or I would. She resisted for a while, but when I didn't soften, she flipped and said, think again. I'm way out of your league. You may not be lucky twice. I laughed at her words. She's so smug. Once I say yes to the divorce, I won't change my mind. Even if you're begging, coming crawling on your hands. I let out a bitter laugh and said, fine by me. Her true colors really came out then. The mask slipped completely. This wasn't the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't seen it clearly before. She packed her stuff and left. We're going through the separation period before we can proceed with the divorce. We have a 6 months wait period, and it's killing me. I'm counting the days till it gets over. We've split the assets 50-50, put the house up for sale. Luckily, we don't have kids, so there's no custody battle. Even without that, things are messy. And on top of that, everyone around is calling me impulsive and too sensitive. They're belittling my feelings, saying that I have blown this out of proportion, and it could be solved just via couples therapy. Therapy my ass. My mom called me worried. Jack, honey, marriage takes work. Everyone has rough patches. Mom, this isn't a rough patch. She fundamentally doesn't respect me. Would you stay with Dad if he laughed along while his friends made fun of you? The divorce is almost finalized. The wait period was dramatic, though. She put up a face that it was my loss, and she was leading her best life. She subtly tried to manipulate me using my parents and friends. You see, I'm a low-key guy. Don't make my life public. I didn't go about telling everyone I was divorcing. She did. She deliberately slipped out this information to my parents and my friends and fed them a twisted version of the truth. She painted me as a paranoid husband who had spied on her and found some harmless jokes between her friends and blown it out of proportion. My dad even came down to meet me and knock some sense into me. He sat me down and explained that women often rely on their close-knit group of friends as a safety net, a place to vent, and that I shouldn't be insecure about it. Jack, I've been married to your mother for 40 years. You think she doesn't complain about me to her friends? That's just what women do. Dad, this isn't normal venting. Let me show you. He said I was acting impulsively and throwing away a marriage over what he assumed was just meaningless gossip. I let him speak his piece, and then without a word, I pulled out my laptop and showed him the messages. The moment he started reading, his expression changed. I watched as his face went from skepticism to shock to anger. He was utterly speechless. He saw firsthand that it wasn't just light-hearted teasing, but outright mockery, pure, unfiltered insults. Emma was not just allowing it, but actively encouraging it. After a long pause, he just got it now. He didn't apologize outright, but the way he patted my shoulder and simply said, "Do what you have to do, son," made me realize that my silence on the topic was making me the bad guy. Now I understood why everyone called me impulsive. I raised you boys to stand up for yourselves, he added. I'd be disappointed if you stayed in a situation like this. That meant everything to me. My dad had always been my role model for what a man should be: strong, fair, and unwavering in his principles. When she told everyone about our divorce, my parents and some close friends tried to talk to me, but I didn't indulge. Hence, most of them believed her version of the story. Naturally. So anyway, I managed to sell the house at a great price. The market was hot, and we made a decent profit. We divided the assets evenly. To my surprise, she didn't fight me on this. Her pride wouldn't allow it. I was more than happy with her approach because I just wanted everything over with ASAP. She had moved in with one of her friends and wasted no time putting up an act of a carefree, exciting life on social media. Her posts were flooded with pictures and videos of her partying, traveling, and living her best life. I knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted me to see it, to feel like I had lost something irreplaceable. She wanted to make me feel jealous. One night, after a few drinks, my buddy Mark showed me her Instagram. She was at some rooftop bar in Manhattan, cocktail in hand, surrounded by a group of guys in expensive suits. She's really trying to show you what you're missing, huh? Mark said. I studied the photo for a minute. In the past, it might have hurt, but now, I just felt sorry for her. The forced smile, the carefully posed shot, the desperate need for validation. It all seemed so transparent. You know what's funny? I told Mark. She looks miserable. But instead of wallowing, I moved on. I redirected my energy into rebuilding myself. I hit the gym harder than ever before, dropping from 22% body fat to 14% in just a few months. I wasn't just looking better. I was feeling stronger, more confident, more in control. I also started a side business in sports nutrition consulting that I had been meaning to launch for years, with no toxic influences holding me back. I got certified as a sports nutrition specialist, leveraging my background in finance to create comprehensive wellness plans that addressed both physical and financial health, a unique angle that really resonated with clients. I'm more focused and productive than ever. I spend my day at work, sweat at the gym, and come back home to work on my business. It's so fulfilling. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm truly living for myself, not trying to measure up to someone else's expectations. She couldn't bear to see I was doing so good without her. She started poking her nose back in my life. Actually, Emma and I had been in the middle of an IVF process before everything fell apart. We'd been trying naturally for a couple of years with no success, and had just started the medical route. Given the circumstances, I withdrew from the process, making it clear that I no longer consented to having a child with her. Simple and fair, right? This did not sit well with her. She had this twisted request that I should let her have my child despite the separation. Like, what the hell? I said no. Any sane person would have understood it. But she was entitled. She started blowing up first with texts, long paragraphs, and emotional appeals. Then came the calls. I had not blocked her yet, thinking we might have to communicate for the divorce, and she was cooperating until now. Jack, please. We've already gone through so much of the process. The doctor said my eggs are perfect, and we have a real chance. Don't take this away from me. Emma, we're getting divorced. Why would we bring a child into that situation? Because I'm running out of time. Do you know how hard it is to start over at my age? To find someone, build a relationship, get married again, and then try for a baby? I might miss my window completely. Her panic was real, but so was my resolve. I wasn't going to create a lifelong connection to someone who had betrayed my trust so deeply. When I ignored the texts and calls, she showed up on my doorstep. She looked disheveled, eyes puffy from crying, quite opposite to the glamorous life she showed off online. She pleaded, "Please, this is all I've ever wanted. I don't even need you to be involved. Just let me have this baby. I'll raise it alone. You won't have to do anything." I said, "I'm relieved we don't have children together. The separation would have been so difficult. It's easy this way. And you want to complicate it by having my child? I won't permit it." She still persisted, but I firmly said, "We are done. I want no connection to you now or in the future." She clutched my sleeves. Tears rolled down her face. She begged, "I know we didn't work out, but this is different. It's my dream. I've always wanted to be a mother. Please don't take this away from me." She was desperate, but I remained unmoved and asserted, "You're asking me to bring a child into this world, into a broken relationship. I won't do it. I refuse to have a child that links me to you for life." She sobbed harder and made all sorts of unrealistic promises. "I'll sign anything you want. No child support, no involvement. You won't even have to see them. I just need this." I shook my head. "My decision is final. I already informed the clinic to discard my sample. There's nothing left to discuss." I remember the look in her eyes, a mix of desperation, anger, and disbelief. She couldn't fathom that I would deny her something she wanted so badly. But that was the difference between us. She thought only of herself, while I was thinking of a potential child who would be born into a fractured situation. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for any sign of softness. I remained unmoved, and she finally left, wiping her tears. A few days later, her parents reached out with the same requests. They assured me I wouldn't have any responsibility for the child. She would sign an official document that she would ask for no child support. But my answer remained the same. Absolutely not. I wanted no connection to her, and certainly not through a child. This is the final stretch before the divorce is finalized. I can see the finish line, and I'm counting down the days. Final update. It's been a while and life has fucking exploded in the best possible way. After everything that happened, I threw myself into my business, and it has paid off tremendously. I started my sports nutrition consulting as a side hustle primarily for amateur athletes, and now it has grown into a full-fledged company with 5 employees. I've expanded into personalized fitness programs, recovery techniques, and even a premium supplement line that's been featured in Men's Health and Sports Illustrated. I was able to scale it beyond my expectations, and now I run it full-time. I quit my financial advising job a year ago and never looked back. The transition wasn't easy. There were plenty of late nights, uncertain moments, and financial stress as I built the business. But unlike my marriage, this was stress with purpose. Every obstacle I overcame made me stronger and moved me forward. I remember the day I landed my first professional athlete client, a linebacker for an NFL team who was recovering from knee surgery. He'd tried everything to get back to peak condition, but nothing was working. My program got him back on the field 3 weeks ahead of schedule, and the referrals started pouring in after that. Well, Emma's been watching it all. I never blocked her on social media, but don't follow her either. I know for sure that she looks up on my profile every now and then because I see her likes on my business achievement posts or gym progress pics. Sometimes she'll even leave a brief comment. "Congratulations," or "Looking good." I don't respond. I don't post much, but whenever I do, it's about my business milestones or fitness achievements, and not any random stuff. My brother noticed it too. "Dude, your ex-wife is stalking your Instagram hard," he told me one day over beers. "Megan, his wife, follows her, and she said Emma brings you up in her stories sometimes, trying to act like you guys are still on good terms." "We're not," I said simply. "Oh, Megan knows that. She just thinks it's pathetic how Emma's trying to associate herself with your success now." Recently, I spoke to one of the mutual friends, and she told me that Emma brings me up more often than she'd like to admit. The same woman who smugly told me I would never find someone like her again, that I was lucky to have had her, is now silently stalking my every move. "She asks about you every time we talk," the friend admitted. "Wants to know if you're seeing anyone, how your business is doing, if you ever mention her. It's honestly getting weird. During the waiting period, and even few months after the divorce, she continued posting about her fun and colorful social life. But gradually it shifted. Her life has been anything but perfect. She enjoyed her carefree life for a while, but eventually she felt lonely. After all, her friends got engaged and married and prioritized their personal lives. The friend with which she moved in after the divorce also got engaged and asked Emma to move out. She chose them over me, and at last got left behind by her soulmate friends. Those cheerful group pictures with her so-called best friends had disappeared now. Instead, she's been posting cryptic stories about fake friends and how one bad apple can ruin the bunch. Even Vanessa, her bitchy friend who was married to the hedge fund manager? Yeah, turns out he was cheating on her with his assistant. Massive public scandal, divorce, the whole drama. Vanessa moved back to her hometown in disgrace. Karma's a bitch, huh? I heard through the grapevine that Emma tried to reconnect with Vanessa after that, thinking they could bond over being divorced. But Vanessa was too deep in her own problems to care about Emma's. The Boss Babes group chat apparently fell apart completely when one of the other women accused Stephanie of sleeping with her husband. The whole toxic circle imploded under the weight of its own bullshit. The best part was when the mutual friend let it slip to Emma that I'm dating another woman. It's true. I have found love again. Her name's Olivia, a former professional volleyball player turned physical therapist. She's 32, 5'10", athletic as hell, with this amazing smile that lights up a room. She's my business partner, smart, independent, and driven. We met through work when she approached me about collaborating on recovery protocols for athletes. It started as a professional relationship and naturally grew into something so deep and meaningful. She's nothing like Emma, and that's the best part. There are no mind games, no belittling, and cruel laughter at my expense. She respects me, supports me, and most importantly, she values me for who I am, not for what I can provide or how I compare to someone else's rich husband. With Olivia, everything feels real. When she compliments me, I know she means it. When we disagree, we talk it out like adults. There's no passive-aggressive bullshit, no running to friends to mock me behind my back. She moved in with me 3 months ago, and it's been fucking amazing. We work out together, collaborate on the business, and push each other to be better. She understands my drive because she has the same ambition herself. Last month, we opened a small performance center downtown, combining our expertise into a holistic approach to athletic development. The place has been packed since day one. When Emma found out about her, she lost it. She showed up at my gym unannounced while I was training a client, asking for a few minutes. She looked different and desperate. Well put together on the outside, but hollow-eyed and regretful. She started off by saying sorry. This was the first time she ever uttered that word, and it felt she meant it. "Jack, can we talk privately, please?" she asked, glancing nervously at my client, a college basketball player who was clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I excused myself for a moment and led Emma to the small office in the back. "What do you want, Emma?" "I'm working." She took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I need to apologize to you. I was wrong. So wrong about everything." She admitted that it was her mistake to prioritize her friends over me. She was guilty and remorseful. She spilled everything. How in the end, her friends all got busy with their own lives. 2 of them had kids now and lost touch. Another had moved away for her husband's job. Their group got scattered. "We used to talk every day, and now I'm lucky if I get a text back once a week," she said, eyes downcast. "I sacrificed my marriage for people who dropped me the minute their lives changed." This was the primary reason she wanted to have kids with me, because her friends were having them and she didn't want to feel left out. She confessed that she wanted to fit into the girls' gang. These girls were the coolest ones in her college. Emma wanted to be a part of this group, hence did everything to fit in, and never stood up against them. "I was insecure," she admitted. "I always felt like I had to prove myself to them, like I wasn't good enough unless they approved of my life, and they never thought you were good enough for me. So I tried to see you through their eyes instead of my own." She said, "I never wanted to hurt you and didn't mean what I said in the chat. I just played along to be in their good books." I was like, "Exactly. You cared about them, their opinion, and not about my feelings. You made your choice, and I made mine. And we both are living by it." She wiped her tears and tried to fake excitement. "I'm so happy for your success. You're doing so well. I follow your business updates. Your body looks amazing too. You're absolutely ripped now. You're thriving. You look younger and more confident." I didn't melt, just nodded with a half smile. Then came the real reason for her visit. Emma had lost her marketing job 6 months ago during company downsizing. She'd been struggling to find something comparable, burning through her savings. Her new apartment had serious water damage from a burst pipe, and her insurance was giving her the runaround. I've been staying at an Airbnb, but it's eating through what little money I have left, she explained, voice cracking. My parents offered to let me move back home, but they're in Florida now, and there's no job market for me there, she meekly said. Now that I've realized my mistakes and lost all my toxic friends, do we have a chance to try again? I laughed at her question. She didn't call off her friends. They sidelined her, and when she had no one, she came to me as if I was the last choice. I smirked. What about Olivia? You know about her, don't you? She pretended to be surprised and then whispered, You've only known her for a few months. Shouldn't be difficult to get her out of the picture. We had 6 years together, Jack. The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. After everything she'd done, she thought she could just waltz back into my life, because it was convenient for her now. I said it actually would be difficult, because you know what? I love her. She's an amazing woman. I wish I could say the same for you. Then she broke down completely. Please, I need help. Even just temporarily. Let me stay at your place for a few weeks until my apartment is fixed. I don't have anywhere else to go. She was in tears, saying she lost everything. A happy married life. A chance to be a mother. Her career was stalling while mine was soaring. Even the men she had tried to date after me had all let her down. She confided that none of them were serious about a relationship, and that the few who were financially successful treated her like a trophy, not with the respect that she claimed she wanted now. The dating apps are horrible, Jack. Men just want one thing, and the decent ones don't want a woman in her mid-30s with nothing to show for it. I made a mistake. I threw away the one good man who treated me right. Her eyes were remorseful. She had finally realized what she had lost, that she had let go of the one person who genuinely loved her, for people who didn't care. The pain of realizing that she had thrown away something real for short-term validation from fake friends who abandoned her when she needed them. She grabbed my arm. Please, I'll do anything. I can help with your business. I'm good at marketing, you know that. I can help you take it to the next level. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Olivia poked her head in, immediately assessing the situation. Everything okay in here? She asked, her eyes flicking between me and Emma. Everything's fine, I assured her. Emma was just leaving. Emma stared at Olivia, taking in her athletic build, natural beauty, and confident posture. The comparison was inevitable, and Emma knew she was looking at a woman who was everything she wasn't. Genuine, self-assured, and truly supportive. But I felt nothing. No bitterness, no anger, just peace. I told her goodbye, and I meant it. I closed the door on her for the final time. Last I heard, she's living with her parents again at 36, working an entry-level job at half her former salary. Her Instagram is mostly dead now, except for occasional reposts of motivational quotes about rebuilding and second chances.